Three, two, one.
Saving the day.
Can't believe it! Look at this!
Hello and welcome back to the OCC. I'm Bubbles and I'm joined by Jking. We'd like to apologise for the unfortunate delays. There were a couple technical issues, but we should have gotten through them and hopefully they will not come up again. We had Head versus Berto Burrito in the last match. Unfortunately, the delay in that was lost. But we are happy to announce that Head won 2-0. So we'll take a quick look at the bracket and we'll see where it's updated. So Head taking 2-0 over Berto. We had Dian taking a 2-1 against 66 Better, meaning we will later on have Head versus Dian. But for now, we've got to get through these bottom bracket matches, and we are going to be looking at Noan 5 versus Nuff. Noan 5 obviously being a absolute veteran to the game, and Nuff being much more of a newcomer. So it's a little bit of the old versus the new. We are going to take a little peek at these decks before we get into the matches. We're just going to quickly zoom through all of them, and that is going to be done by the lovely Jking.
Alrighty. So, taking a look first at Noan's lists, again, he has Japan, Poland, Legions. This has sort of the Japan aggro package combined with the Legions mid-range package. So it's a bit of a mid-range deck, but it can certainly get very, very fast. His second deck is quite similar. It is US Poland Legions. So similarly, it has the sort of fast element of the US frontline package combined with the mid-range package of the Poland Legions. And then his third deck is going in a bit of a different direction. It is Brit Air with a Soviet package. And this is kind of your standard Brit Air, just with the good Soviet cards rather than the good US cards. So, of course, you have stuff like Gladiator, Swordfish, the close air supports, with a few interesting inclusions like ATS and Patriotic Firestorm. So that's Noan's lineup. Pretty aggressive. Not quite Dion levels of aggressive, but pretty aggressive if he's able to, but with enough value to sort of stick in the game. And Noan will be going up against Nuff. And Nuff's lineup is quite the standard lineup that we're seeing for this tournament, the lineup that quite a few players are bringing. So the first deck he has is just pretty classic Jagro, Japan, Germany aggro. This deck is very, very fast, and it's all about trying to get on the board early and take advantage of that board control for quick draw and just fast-paced tempo gameplay. His second deck is quite the opposite direction. It is a US Britain ramp deck, so this is going to try to cheat out some extra credit slots early and then use that to start playing down these higher value cards early. Cards like the Black Watch, the Glamour Boys, to guard up, try to prevent your opponent from rolling down the game, and then win with value through cards like P51B and US Research. And then his third deck is, I think, everybody's favorite deck from Ladder. It is Britain, Poland, Exile, and this deck is a very fast, aggressive, sort of an air deck. It doesn't run close air support, but it runs a lot of air units, and you're really trying to take advantage of cards like Hammer Home or cheating out early Exile units with the PZL. So this is two faster decks than Noan has, and then one much slower deck than Noan has. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they maneuver through the bans. Is Noan a bit worried about his decks being a bit slower, that they can't go under ramp, or does he think they have enough value to sort of stay in the game and stick through ramp and just eventually win on value with these big legions?
Well, people have been waiting long enough, so we are going to get straight into the bans and figure out how each player felt about them. We see US being banned from both players, so we have Britain and Japan left for both players. So we're going to see some nation mirrors. How do you feel about each player's chances of victory based purely on these bans?
Well, we see that the players have the three same nations, but they don't share a single deck. So with US banned from both players, I think no one banning Nuff's US. I think this makes sense. He thinks has a better chance at outlasting the aggressive decks with his legions than he does sort of staying in against the value of the ramp deck. Nuff's ban of no one's US is very interesting to me because that's a deck that I don't think it might just be it's the deck he's the least familiar with, so he's going to ban it so he doesn't have to think about that. But it's certainly the deck that is the most untested in the meta, and I have the most questions about going into this. So with that banned, it's going to be a bit more straightforward. Japan German a bit more aggressive versus Japan Poland a bit slower. And then there is the Brit Poland Exile versus the Brit Soviet Air. Again, Nuff is on the slightly faster side of things. So if Nuff can get off to a good start, he's especially going to be wanting to go first in any matchup he plays, and just really try to win as quickly as possible because no one will stick in the game long enough.
And I mean, if Noan can stick in the game, he has some really good tools to deal with both of these decks here, right? From Nuff. The Exile list, it might struggle a little bit to deal with guards, and also you might actually struggle to keep your Exile units large enough to keep them out of Claim the Skies range. If you just claim the skies, trade, hit face, you could have some really, really strong sticking power. And then also against Jagger, a lot of guards can give you quite a bit of time, but then Noan also has a lot of ways of contesting the game. How do you feel like Noan is going to do in the long game? Do you feel like it's a guaranteed Noan win if he can survive, or do you think Nuff can also go the extra mile?
I don't think Nuff has any chance of winning on board in the long game. The one big thing about Noan's lists, these two lists that he has, is there's Sincerely Yours in the air list, and then there is no healing in the Japan list. So if Nuff might be able to convert enough early game tempo into HQ damage that he could potentially win off of burn in the late game by just getting a few key draws at certain situations, even if no one has a sort of mounting board pressure. Cards like Signal Regiment, Bombing Raid in the Japan deck, and cards like sort of the Yak, the big Yak, the 4K Yak, and Hammer Home in the Brit Poland deck are capable of quite a bit of burst out of nowhere. So no one does have to think about that. He can't just sit back completely. He does need to put pressure on Nuff. Once he gets into that mid game, he can't just stick around forever because Nuff will eventually kill Noan through burn. He has more than enough to deal 20 damage in both of his decks pretty comfortably.
So most of the Brit Air decks we're seeing today, we see Brit US Air a little bit, which is a bit of a classic deck, and then we also see Brit Poland, which is this Exile Air list, which is very, very aggressive. What do you think the Soviets bring to the table over Poland and over US that's made no one pick them today?
I think the big things are there's the cheap 1K removal pieces with Bloody Sickles and Claim the Skies. These are capable, particularly against Jagro. This feels like it might be a bit of a Jagro tech because if Jagro goes first against Brit US or against Brit Poland, Jagro can snowball quite hard. But if you have Soviets with Sickles, you can just drop a turn one Bloody Sickle on the one drop, and then suddenly things are quite back to even. And then Claim the Skies, you can do turn two Swordfish, Claim the Skies, and suddenly everything's completely even, and in fact, you're ahead on board, which is something that the other air decks really can't do. And the other thing is it has Chika. So I think no one really thought there would be more Brit Air and Jagra. And we see some Brit Air and Jagra in this tournament. It's not a bad meta call. But I think Chika is going to be a bit less useful against Exile because Exile relies more on these heavy hitting fighters rather than the buffed up bombers that you might expect from Brit US Air.
So we also see Exile bringing a variance of countermeasures, and we actually see Noan 5 on this sorry, I'm tongue twisting myself here on this Japan Poland sort of aggressive deck, and then we see Nuff on their Exile list. Quite a strong hand here from Exile. How do you feel each player is going to be looking in this mulligan? What are they hoping to find? What are they hoping to not find?
So, from Nuff's point of view, he's going first and has the PCL. That's exactly what you want from Exile. But what he wants is another 3-cost Exile unit he can play other than the Hurricane. Because the Hurricane is good because it buffs an existing Exile unit on board, and PCL does not count as Exile itself. So, there's going to be even a question of whether you even keep the Hurricane, because you have the PCL on 1, so you just need a good card to follow up on turn 2, and the Hurricane is not that. So it's going to have to weigh the odds of whether you want to keep it around for a potential turn 3 if you find the exile versus weighing the odds of if you get an exile mulligan in just 2 cards. Whereas on Noan's side, you have the Plan West, and that's quite good. The 56th Recon is a very cheap way to trigger intel, but you don't have any of these 1-drops, and you're worried about the turn 1 PCL. So from Noan's perspective, I could see arguments for keeping the Plan West, keeping the 56th. I could see arguments for a full mulligan from Noan's point of view. So it's going to be very interesting to see um, what.
Unfortunately, we seem to be having some more production issues. We are very sorry about this. Hopefully, we can get straight back into the players as soon as possible. Now, no one does have this one of honorable death. Do you think it's worth hard mulliganing to look for this honorable death because it's one of the few ways no one has of actually dealing with these PZLs, right? Especially when you know Nuff is going first. If this PZL comes down turn one, there's nothing else, correct me if I'm wrong, there's nothing else available in the deck that can answer this before no one gets to pop off value from this.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. That's the only way to kill PZL on turn one. But something that no one could consider as an alternative is he can let the PZL stick on the board for one turn if he's able to get enough tempo advantage with units. So as long as he doesn't eat an unexpected resistance on a one drop, that would be sort of lights out if there's PZL with unexpected resistance on one into a free drop on turn two. That would be quite bad for Noan. But if he's able to do 15th Cavalry to the front line unimpeded, and then on the follow-up either do Type 93 and trade out with something, or do a 35T, get the value trade. Exile doesn't have great tempo plays of removing units. It just has great tempo plays of playing their own units. So if no one is able to keep up his own unit tempo, he can just eventually trade out with Nuff before Nuff can get enough value, or enough tempo to sort of start pressuring face. And if he can keep the board clear of Exile units before turn 4, he doesn't have to worry about the huge swing turn that is Hammer Home.
We do also see quite a few new cards being available for Poland. We see the Punish, obviously able to essentially be a 2k MI5, slightly stronger because, slightly stronger in some senses, slightly worse in others, because if you hit a high value target, you don't have to worry about it coming back, but you can't put a low value target back on top of the deck and force them to draw it again. We do also see Stretch to the Line, which is a new card for Poland, which seems very, very powerful. How do you feel like Poland's package fares up now with what we have available compared to when Poland used to be very popular? Because some of the cards were stronger then and have since been nerfed. So how does the Poland package fare up compared to its old former self?
I think honestly, Poland has really only seen one notable nerf, and they haven't seen really any notable rotations to the dedicated Legions package. And the nerf was to the underground state. It used to be able to return to hand anywhere on board. Now it only retreats, so it's less good at taking out units in the front line for those big tempo turns. And honestly, underground state, we see a lot of players have stopped running it altogether. And even if it was never nerfed, I think there's a fair argument that maybe some of these players would choose not to run underground state. So I think Poland right now, particularly the Legions package, is the best that it has ever been in the game. You have the most options. We see there's a lot of different ways you can build it. They've finally added a alternative to Plan West. That's sort of something we've seen in the past with the Legions, where people have tried less Plan Wests. They've tried doing things other than Plan West with a couple of the Legion generating cards, but it's never quite worked out. But now Stretch the Line is the first card that has actually made waves in turning around what has been just a very Plan West focused deck, because the ability to get a 3/3 on 2 rather than 2/2s on 3. And that is quite big. And Exile is kind of one of those matchups where that can be quite big, and where even if your opponent cheats out a 3/3 fighter on turn 2, if you can cheat out a 3/3 Legions on turn 2, that can trade 1-for-1 if your opponent doesn't have additional buffs.
It also comes with this Intel proc, right? Which is very powerful having this Intel proc. Just before we carry on the conversation, I just want to give a slight update. It seems to be we're having issues with the spectator feature, which is what we use to watch the matches and stream the matches. So production are trying to get to the bottom of that as quickly as possible. In the meantime, we're just going to get mostly Jaking's thoughts on various things within the game, try and get a little bit of just a breakdown of everything we possibly can. Before we move on from Poland and the Polish package, one of the cards which was popular then and is popular now is Tarno. But something has changed in the game since Tarno used to be popular, which is we have this mechanic suppress. How do you feel like Tarno fares up against suppress? Obviously, if it gets suppressed, you still have this really big, powerful infantry body. But the main reason you're playing Tarno is to generate these legions and to draw lots of cards very quickly. How do you feel like Tarno fares in an environment where cards like Suppress exist?
So if you're talking about like if you're playing against a deck that has single target suppress cards like Duress, like the M10, I think the Tarnow actually fares quite well, because you will almost always not play Tarnow until you are triggering it at least once on the turn you play it. just because there's such a high risk that it's able to be immediately removed if you are to play it down on turn 5, and you'll typically hopefully have better options than Tarnow on turn 5. And once you start triggering the Tarnow, you're creating two threats at the same time. You're creating this legions that is going to be able to grow, and if you have other legions on the board, those are going to be able to grow. And your opponent's going to want to suppress that, because suppressing the legions can be quite good. It takes away guard, it takes away all of the stats, and it can't gain additional stats later. Whereas they also want to suppress the Tarnow to prevent the ability to generate additional legions, additional intel, or draw. Now, if you're talking about the AoE suppresses like the White Deaths and the B24D or the B24Js, those is where Tarnow can struggle quite a bit, and Legions in general can struggle quite a bit against these AoE suppress effects, because not only are they able to get rid of Tarnow's ability to generate and ability to draw, you will simultaneously be suppressing all of the legions that have already been generated by the Tarnow. So I think this that might be one of the reasons no one banned this US ramp deck from Nuff, is because he's afraid of these B24Js.
So we've spoken a lot about this Japan Poland deck, and I do actually just want to quickly touch on this US Poland deck that no one's brought, because there's a few interesting points I'd like to look at here. We don't see War Machine, which is a card no one has favored in a lot of decks. A lot of decks where other players don't favor it, no one has always stuck to this War Machine, but he's not using it now. So one thing is, what's changed within cards to make War Machine not viable? And then the other thing I want to look at here, or at least not viable in this sort of mid-range deck that no one likes. And then the other thing I want to look at here is we've got some interesting choices in place of War Machine. We've got things like Iron Man in here. We've got Unity of Strength in here, which can dish out a lot of damage very quickly. But then we also do see the Skytrain in here, which is one card some people have favored taking out ever since we lost the Devil's Brigade, or sorry, the Red Devils as one of these one drops you can generate.
Yeah, you raised some very good points. There's some very interesting inclusions like the Iron Man that, honestly, I think the Iron Man might just be a way to get around some of these AoE suppress effects and AoE board clears that no one might be a bit worried about, because it is just covert entirely on its own is just a useful mechanic to stick units on the board in this type of deck. Um, and one of the other reasons he might have cut down on the war machines in the US Poland in particular is prior, when you were relying on the Plan Wests, you wouldn't really have much to do on turn 2. Most of the 2-cost units you want to play in US Frontline are German units, and Poland was not bringing in anything you would play on turn 2 previously. Now that Noan is instead on 4 Stretch the Line and just the 3 Plan Wests, it's less important to have an immediate turn 2 play with the War Machine, because he has different turn 2 plays with the with the Stretch the Line, and he's also running these 2 copies of 142nd, which is something I just noticed in his lineup. It's the 2-cost 2/3 Blitz that heals your HQ if you're able to trade out some units. So it seems like he's including these additional units to play on turn 2, so he doesn't fall too far behind on the board. And honestly, in the meta right now, that is probably the correct call, is just worrying about falling behind on board against a lot of these decks that are very capable of snowballing out.
So unfortunately, game 1, I believe we have unfortunately lost it. I believe it is a Noan 5-1-0. So we now see Noan. I believe he was running his Japan Poland deck. So we're going to see Noan being forced to now play this Britain Soviet air deck. What do you expect Nuff will want to play against this? On the one hand, Jagro can very quickly swamp the board if you're going first. However, this Exile deck, it has a lot of ways of blocking bombers, and it can potentially go a lot quicker than Brit Air. So if you're Nuff here and you're looking at this Brit-Soviet list, what do you feel like you want to bring to give you your best odds of getting a 1-up?
Yeah, it's always an interesting question. I think players sort of approach these types of issues where you're down, you have 2 decks, you have the deck you just lost with, and the other deck you will need to win with to advance regardless. So at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter a lot because you need to win with 2, but players approach this from different points of view. So from one point of view, Nuff might say, well, Exile is just one of those decks where 50% of the time you win, 50% of the time you lose, kind of regardless of what your opponent's doing, and I lost the previous one, so I'm just going to bring it again, and I'm going to win this one. And that seems to be what he's doing, and he's has another turn
What a
1 start with
hand!
EZL going first, and he has an absolutely amazing follow-up.
We do see Noan finding a fighter to buy some time. However, this is just so much value on the board already, and it's going to be a lot of damage when Noan plays C embargo. It's going to be a little bit more ping there. The sequel's going to be a bit of damage there. We could very quickly see Nuff being able to find lethal or Noan with things like this Yak and the potential C patrol. We do see the evasive action. How important is the evasive action likely to be in this situation, given Noan's hand?
Given Noan's current hand, I don't think the evasive action is going to get as much value as you might against other matchups. This Kitty Hawk is not going to be able to hit anything other than the HQ, and the Shark is probably not going to be coming down for a ton of damage. However, no one goes for the C embargo line rather than the sickle trade line. So it seems like no one is relying on this Shark moving forward into the next turn. So if no one does go for the Gladiator Shark play on the follow-up, this evasive action is going to be able to do quite a bit. And we see Nuff choosing to actually respect the Gladiator, trade it down. So this is going to make Shark even worse. And if no one chooses to go for Gladiator Shark, the tempo play rather than the sickle for the guaranteed kill on Lysander, it will get blocked. And instead, no one just choosing to stick another 2-5 on the board. What do you think is sort of going through no one's head with just sticking these 2-5s?
I mean, it's a very well statted unit, right? It gives you a way of trying to trade into Nuff's units. But now we see Hurricane for Nuff. Nuff could very easily be closing out this game before no one can get online. We do have to remember the Shark, it recently got nerfed, so not quite as much damage as it used to be. Bloody Sickles and Sharks available, though. Nuff is going to have a good chunk of their board clear. I mean, if Nuff can close out this game quick enough, which is a good chance they'll be able to, obviously that is a great, start to this trying to reverse sweep Noan. But if Noan can survive more than just this early game, this is almost a guaranteed win here for Noan, right? There is so much value in their hand. There is so many ways of going the extra mile. I would be very cautious about this Buffalo. It's a very slow unit. How do you feel about the Buffalo coming out here?
I I think the idea is just pressuring more units on the board and giving
Look at
yourself the
this
ability
damage,
to
though.
draw pass. Now, I think Noan might have actually missed a very high value play with Claim the Skies on the previous turn. He could have claimed the skies and then attacked following the Claim the Skies to fully remove the Yak from board and even keeping the 3-1 Gladiator left on board after that.
And
So
this Yak has to die this turn or Noan is dead. Now, it is possible to kill the Yak, but it's a lot of work. And the question for me is, if no one can kill this Yak, does that now put Noan in such a position that there's just no possibility of swinging this before the inevitability of finding a way out here from Nuff?
look at this. Noan is using double Claim the Skies. And he gets, I don't know if that's necessarily the 50-50 he wanted, but the way Claim the Skies works is it gives the highest attack unit, and if you have two, it will give it to it will select it randomly. But either way, double Claim the Skies lets Nuff just completely, or no one completely turn this around on Nuff, and suddenly it's looking quite rough.
And now Noan is gonna be able to deal with this as well. Oh, sorry. Now Noan can deal with it. The HMS Illustrious, making the Shark do 2 damage on its deployment.
But this will get blocked by the evasive action.
Evasive
He doesn't go for
action.
the sickle. If Nuff can top deck a Hammer Home right this turn, and he even has the possibility of playing Convoy Hammer Home if he finds card draw instead.
Finds the Lysander. Might be able to find just a little bit of extra burn with the Lysander. There are 3 copies of Sea Patrol in this deck. But Nuff, considering going for the trade over the face damage.
Yeah, and at this point, he's down 2 of his 3 Sea Patrols, and he's down 1 of his 2 Yaks. There's not a lot of extra burn left in the deck, so that might be something that's factoring into his mind about not trading, thinking he needs to win on board. But on the other hand, it means that
Sea
if you
Patrol for Noan,
trade,
though.
oh, that's his only copy too. That's a huge draw.
Means Noan is going to be able to clear this board in such a neat and beautiful way. And now Nuff, no cards in hand, no cards on board. You've got to save the Hurricane. How many Yaks is Nuff running? Because a second Yak with Hurricane.
He is running 2 Yaks, so he essentially just needs to stick for this top deck Yak for the extra damage, and he keeps it in hand. He sees his out in this game.
Look at the card draw in Noan's hand. 3 convoys. I mean, Noan here has got to be looking for some cast, right? Buff up these units, get more damage out of them, and just finds more card draw on another Swordfish. Noan's hand, I mean, obviously in the long game, this would be a beautiful hand, but Noan is already going to win on the long game. Noan needs damage to get rid of Nuff's win cons that are left in this deck as quickly as possible.
Yeah, if you're Noan, you would happily trade your entire hand for a single close air support right now. At this point, you know your board is never getting cleared. You know Nuff's never coming back on board. You just need to put all of your units into the HQ and try to end this game as quickly as possible.
There's the Cass. Now it's worth noting that Noan does not run MI5, because an MI5 here would pretty much be game over for Nuff. Ultra, however, could potentially be a very strong find if no one's able to find it. Sincerely yours. Gonna buy Nuff some time and some card draw. Devil's Brigade means a Sea Patrol would be lethal.
But does he play it this turn? Because Hammer Home, right? Yeah. But surely
what
Noan...
What are we gonna see? The MS or the Hurricane?
I think you have to go for the MS. This way you're eating up some of this HQ damage. You're making it harder for Noan to push a unit to the front line to stop Devil's Brigade Hammer Home being out for lethal. Noan finding the second cast off the top. This is going to make his trades look a little bit better. But the question is, does he take the front line?
Are we going to see a draw last? Not that it's going to change the outcome of the game, but taking the front line, this prevents the Devil's Brigade from finding lethal. Second Devil's Brigade.
And you can take out the 3/1 Swordfish and take out the Shark in the front line. So you clear up the front line, and then you keep the second Devil's Brigade just in case you top deck your third Sea Patrol.
Or you go for both of them and you get a 5/5 in the front line.
Oh, and he's just going for it. He's just saying he's pumping the board. And Noan's hand right now is not the hand you want to be dealing with this.
Finds a Shark! Makes Noan's clearing of the board a lot easier. Has the room to go for the draw first.
Is there anything in Nuff's deck that would make Noan not want to drop to 2? Nuff does run Kitty Hawk.
I mean, the Kitty Hawk in itself is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Your opponent has 2 top decks for lethal, and by playing Sickle, you put it up to 3. But by playing Sickle, you find the third cast. That makes these trades so much easier.
Nuff looking for some burn. There's a Yak in the deck, there's a Sea Patrol in the deck, and there's a P40 Kitty Hawk in the deck. There are also, I believe, 2 convoys left.
Takes the front line. Good thinking at the end. He knows he wins next turn, and there's almost a nothing Nuff can draw to stop that. And
Ultra, it's not enough.
No.
Noan takes a 2-0 against Nuff. Nuff not able to find what they needed to close out this game. And Noan going to be advancing to the next round.
And the Patriotic Firestorm, the icing on the cake, doesn't even need to play it. And that's just a rough showing from Nuff. I mean, you play... I think Nuff had 900 games. Incredible showing. Makes it through quals. Makes it into his first ever top 8, and his reward is to be matched up against Noan 5 in the first round.
I mean, I certainly hope it's not the last we've seen of Nuff. I want to see them come back. I want to see them come back and play against Noan, and I want to see them take the mile. But that has been all from me and Mr. Jking. I believe we're going to be throwing it back to our fellow casters. Oh, not yet. We might have time to check in with the time travel and Turbo Cat match. We are just checking now if it is still ongoing and if we can catch it. If so, we will take a look at what is going on over there. Now, I don't believe we've looked at the decks for a while with Turbo Cat and Time Traveler. Turbo Cat has a USA Britain ramp deck, a Soviet Britain sort of self damage push OTK deck, and a Britain Poland. I believe this is a Legions deck and not an Exile list. And then Time Traveler has a Japan Germany Jagro deck, a Britain Poland Exile deck, and a USA Britain ramp deck. So some fairly interesting decks and some fairly standard decks. How do you feel about these players just based on the matchup? Oh, unfortunately, it was 2-0, so we're going to be taking a look at the brackets, and then we are going to be taking it to Starry and Spooz.
So we're hearing that Turbo Cat actually won and 2-0 over Time Traveler. And that is a second loss of sort of the standard list that we've seen, getting 2-0'd by the very out there list. So this is really showing that the meta's wide open right now. We have quite a few players bringing almost identical lineups, and those players seem to be dropping like flies at the moment to these very widely different deck lists right now. So based on what we've seen so far, do you think there's any standout lists?
I'm
Yeah.
wondering if there's less of a standout list of what's being taken to beat these players, and more if there's something in the players that are losing's lineup that is causing them to lose these games. It could be Exile. This is one of the decks that you need a good start to hit the ground running, and if you just don't get this good start, then it can really struggle to end the game.
Yeah, and this could be sort of confirmation bias where Exile I feel like is a deck that the better your opponent is against it, the less often you feel like you high roll. Because if we look at Nuff's game, both games, he started first with the PZL into presumably a follow-up in game one we didn't see, but definitely in game two he had a very strong start, and just the way Noan played his hand, it just really never gave Nuff a chance. And Noan very easily could have made a mistake, but when you're in the top 8, you're playing against the best of the best. And it's really not going to give you, it's going to be much slimmer margins. And maybe Exile is just a deck that does not perform well at the sort of top echelon of cards.
So we're gonna see Head versus Dian and Noan Cat versus Noan 5 versus Turbo Cat. But that is enough from me and Jking for now. We will check in with you guys later.
Thank you so much, Bubbles. All right, so we are looking to get into the action relatively quickly here with Dion versus Head, and we didn't get to see Dion's game one, but they did win 2-1 versus 66 Better, and 66 Better is a tough opponent to take down. So, I'm confident that both these players definitely have a good shot at it. But yeah, we can go ahead and take a look at their deck list and see what they are bringing for us to enjoy today. So it looks like Head is bringing a Britain US air list, a US Britain ramp list, and a Germany US mid-range list. And then Spooz, I would love it if you would take over for me and show us what Dion is bringing for us today.
Yeah, so we did not have Dion on stage until now. So we're going to take a look at their decks as well. So they bring a Brit Poland air deck that we just saw performing not that great against a Britain Soviet air list. So I think it might be really good if you find the correct opening sequence, but as we just saw, if it falls behind, maybe also has some problems of coming back there. And then we have the US Italy L640 deck, a really aggressive list. So the goal is to find your L640 early on, buff it, and then try to finish out with this. And the third list we have here from Dian is Japan, Germany, Jagro, a really familiar list. with 2 copies of Blitzkrieg here from Dion. So 3 very, very aggressive lists that can be very, very strong early on. So worked out against 6-6 better. Let's see how it performs against Head.
Yeah, so can I ask you, what do you think about the what is colloquially called in the community Pizzagro? What do you think about that as a tournament viable competitive list that also won round 1?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that it performed that great for Dion. I'm not sure if it got banned there or if it actually won a game. Usually I'm not the biggest fan of that archetype. I think I played 1 match on ladder this week with a really, so I played a really ramp heavy kind of meme deck with with actually nothing to really deal with the L640, and my opponent had a perfect opening sequence, L640 into supply drop into, they had so many buffs but they still lost. So I think this deck can really overwhelm your opponent if he doesn't have the correct answers, but it can also be, usually win by turn 3 or 4 or the game is over. So it's kind of a coin flip deck. Depends on how your opening sequence is if you find your L640. But if you don't find it and your opponent has a medium starting hand, I think this deck is, kind of not really competitively viable. But maybe I'm proven wrong here today. I already predicted Birdo versus Head wrong, where Birdo had the aggressive lists. Maybe Head can have another really good match here against Dion with, it's more of mid-range and more heavy decks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it definitely has the ability to win games. But in my personal opinion, I'm still trying to figure out why you would bring Italy secondary when we have Type 94 TK, as well as like the entire additional Japan package, stuff like 15th Cav, commit the reserves. Anyways, we have the bans, and it looks like Head is going to lose that Brit Air list, and Dion is going to lose the Jagro list. So, yeah, I mean, was this expected? Do you think
I mean,
this
it's kind
makes
of the
sense?
same situation like we had against Birdo, right? Head's Brit deck is banned. Dion has access to 2 aggressive lists. Yeah, I mean, I've been really wrong with my prediction for the first matchup from Head today. So I'm kind of be a little bit, defensive here with my prediction on that. But usually I think Dion has the advantage here with 2 still very aggressive lists. If they can find L6 into anything that can buff it, they have a good chance to win with US. And I think this Brit Poland air list also has some really huge potential early on and maybe can outpace Head's ramp deck.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised to see the Brit Air list go, because I think that the US list could have a pretty decent matchup into the Brit Air list, just because if you can get, it's really easy to get the L640 or another early unit to have 3 attack, and that's just gonna allow you to clear basically everything that Brit Air can throw down. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. I played a US Japan list last weekend in qualifiers, and I really like Grum and Goose. I think Grum and Goose is pretty sweet. It allows you to potentially draw like, I'd say on average it's drawing you like 2 cards a turn, or 2 cards when its covert is revealed, but has the potential to drop to 4. I've seen it draw for 4 on several occasions.
Yeah, also the good thing on these covered units is that they don't get bounced when the L640 dies. I really like the inclusion of covered units into L640 archetype. I think they also have 1 copy of Iron Man in it. So that's a really cool idea. If you don't find your buffs, just drop these and they can give you potential draw, or the Iron Man even additional damage for as long as it stays in the front line. So that's a really nice addition into the L640 archetype, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was struggling because my only covert unit was Grum and Goose, and so it's really easy if you're playing an open deck list format to just attack it and get rid of that covert effect. You really need to reveal it on your turn. But if you're playing additional covert units, even just a handful, like literally even just Iron Man, or maybe 1 or 2 other ones, then suddenly it's not so obvious for your opponent, and they sort of start having to read you and make plays like that. So it's always tricky to have hidden information, whether it be countermeasures, whether it be covert units, other stuff like that in open deck list formats. That's why we don't see countermeasure decks all that often.
Yeah, but what I usually like is, and what people are doing usually from time to time, is to just sneak in one copy of a countermeasure. Just not for having it available, but also to kind of mind play with your opponent's
Yeah, yeah.
thought processes. Like if they know they could have this countermeasure and that, so they have to keep everything into consideration when making a decision. Even if you don't have it in hand, it can just influence your opponent's playstyle so much. And that is a big advantage of having countermeasures in an open deck format, while you want to have more of them to surprise your opponent in a closed deck format. So that's really interesting how a meta can just shift depending on if it's closed or deck formats.
Yeah, unfortunately, the covert units don't have that same effect because the covert units are really
Yeah.
obvious if you have one on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So,
sure.
man, what if they were invisible? Wouldn't that be that wouldn't be very fun, but you know, that'd be interesting.
So while we
Anyways,
wait for that, yeah, what is your prediction? I already did mine and hope I'm not wrong this time, but what do you
I
think?
mean, I think that Head brings 3 extremely solid deck lists, and it's going to be very difficult to overcome them, regardless of which one you ban. It's like he really did bring the most difficult to ban set of 3 out of pretty much anyone that we've seen today, I think. So I would say that I do favor Head a little bit here, especially because Head has the ability to suppress the L640 deck, and that is a huge detriment to that deck. That's one of the reasons that the deck kind of stopped seeing play during the Winter War era up until like For Freedom got buffed. So I do favor Head a little bit here, but I definitely think that it's anybody's game. Dion always has the ability to high roll really, really hard. I think I think Head is almost certainly going to get War Machine on turn 2 because Head just always has it. Head always has War Machine on turn 2.
Yeah, it has not been
But
too unfortunate with the opening hands so far
yeah,
today. Maybe they
but
can keep that streak.
let's say theoretically the Head doesn't have War Machine on turn 2, and I know that for Head that's literally impossible, right? That's just simply not possible. That's a skill issue right there. If you're not drawing War Machine on turn 2 every single time. But let's say theoretically that he doesn't have it, then yeah, no, I absolutely think that Head could face some pretty serious problems and very quickly with Dion's aggressive lists. It
And
looks
here
like Dion.
finally we go. Dion bringing the air deck first.
Mm-hmm. Or sorry,
Sounds the
we're not talking
PZL.
about Head. We're talking about Noan. But Noan also has a turn 2 War Machine every single time.
I think
Oh
the
no, it is
Chinese
Head.
players in general, they seem to have it more often than at least I have War Machine in the starting hand. And there we go.
All right, we did
Dion
get
with
our
the
names
PZL. That's
updated.
what you want to have. He has the MS 406 as well, so pretty good opening sequence here for Dion already, with turn 1, 2, and 3 already covered with some really good on curve plays.
Yep. However, Head does have a fairly decent start as well, being able to go turn 1 Jaeger, turn 2 either 35T to reduce cost, or War Machine, dealer's choice. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that it could be anybody's game, but Head definitely. The challenge of this game is going to be how quickly can Head stabilize, and Dion does have a pretty strong aggressive start, so.
Yeah, pretty good. Good thing here for Dion that they go first into this. Pretty good tempo advantage. Can utilize the Hurricane now, or yeah, I think that's the best play, right? Go Hurricane on the MS 406 and then
Yeah, I mean, you can play Battle and then Hurricane if you so choose. Get a 4/4 Hurricane.
sure.
Oh, actually, never mind. Looks like
35T.
it's just gonna be the Hurricane today. And I'm expecting this to go towards the HQ. Make head
Absolutely correct.
have to spend those credits and spend those resources to trade out.
So, what can head do here now? 35T not able to take out these units. 35T into David's brigade.
Yeah, you could
And
play
take out the
Auto
Hurricane.
Canona, and which kind of forces Dion to trade into it, or else it's going to eat all of those 3/3 planes, because man, there is a lot of 3/3 planes in Exile. So I think Auto Canona forces an immediate response out of Dion. But that's definitely not the only option. I mean, there's definitely plenty. Wait, what?
Was it by accident?
That's a extremely game-losing error if
Was that what happened to me from time to time early in KARDS history?
yeah, I mean it's
I
not
want to
like
emote and press end turn. I mean,
yeah,
like,
I highly doubt that that was intentional. But it doesn't look like we're having any technical difficulties as Dion is, clearly hovering. Yeah, I mean, all right, not even attacking HQ from head. That must be an accidental misclick. Wow, I mean, head has got to be beating himself up over that. That's so unfortunate. That's so unfortunate.
and that's why you don't emote in tournaments. Oh,
Unless
head
you're
says he
Jking.
has.
Jking really likes to emote in tournaments.
So it looks like head has some issues here on their end. Maybe could not play a card.
Did head? I would say that head disconnected, except for they never went to timer. So
Something really strange is happening today here in KARDS.
yeah, I'm looking at the date to see if we have any if it's like Friday the 13th or something, because there's something very strange going on today. And head just seems to be sitting there. Head is reporting to the tournament admins that he experienced desync. But
Yeah, I mean, even if he's back now, right? The match is over. Even if
yeah,
he's
the
back in
match is
sync now, I mean, he lost a
super
very
over.
important turn. So I think he can't really progress from here on. It's whether just a lose or we
A
have to
redo,
rematch. I'm
yeah.
not sure how the admins will decide here.
Yeah.
A really tough choice and really tough also for Dion with a really great starting sequence.
I mean, this is lethal right here. So
Okay, so we just hear that it's a lose for head, a loss for head anyway, so looks like Dian is taking match number 1 here with another technical issue here today. Not really as we want this tournament to go, but it's just one of these days.
yeah, I mean it's unfortunate for head. I guess the question is now is does head have their setup fixed, or are we going to, wait until head gets everything sorted out on their end before we go into a game 2? So yeah, very unfortunate indeed. I would have liked to see it be closer. Just because it's more interesting to watch, of course, if it's a closer game.
Okay, and Dian waiting here, trying to, yeah, just maybe give a head chance to reconnect, but it's lethal anyways, as you said, so I think no need to wait here for head. But that was really unfortunate. And Dian with a 1-0 lead now, I guess. And we just
All
try
right.
to figure out what happens to head here.
So Dion just needs to win with the fabled L640 deck. L640, my beloved. Grum and Goose, my beloved. So I mean, yeah, we'll see. I think it's gonna be difficult for head to win both games, just because statistically speaking, Dion is gonna go first one of those games. Most likely, there's a 75% chance that between those two games, Dion is gonna go first. And if you go first and have a pretty decent high roll, and your opponent doesn't have You know, the earliest that they can get down, like an M10, for example, would be after your turn. Well, we will see. I think that it's going to be difficult for Head to not get high rolled twice, which is essentially what Head needs. And I don't know. Do you have any additional thoughts?
No, I'm just checking in the background what might be the reason for the disconnect. Because if it's, I think it's a client error or server error on card side. You can't really blame Head for this. So it's, I would be really annoyed if I would be Head here. Like if you just play your game as usual and suddenly you get a server notice that a server just desynced. I mean, what can you do? I'm not even sure when this error occurs. So but Head needs to be focused here now. If they really lose the match, I think it is a loss for them. So they need to stay focused and don't let them distract from the fact that they just lost the game here because of technical issues. But also, to be honest, I think Dian had a pretty strong opening hand and still had
I
some
think it was
answers.
unlikely. I think that it
Yeah.
was unlikely that Head got there. It was definitely possible. You're 100% right in that Head absolutely could bring it back, but it was going to be miraculously difficult.
Yeah, exactly. So Head should not be. It should not get into his head. He should just, yeah, swipe it away and focus on the next match. Dian with L640, and just try to bring your best deck. So what do you bring if you're Head here? Do you bring the ramp deck or the German deck?
Well, the ramp deck has. I'm assuming it has Jasko because all the ramp decks that we've seen today have Jasko.
Yeah.
So it has the Jasko. It has the it has
The Devils
what else?
Brigade.
The Devil's Brigade. It has some Black Watches. It has some Glamour Boys. It has, of course, Pathfinders. Pathfinders is really nice in that matchup. So I think that both these decks have pretty strong game against L640. Of course, the strategy that you're using to contest L640 is completely different. With Germany, you want to get board pressure, try and get like Schutzens as quickly as possible, try and get M10s as quickly as possible. And with the Britain deck, you're just looking to get to like Glamour Boys, prevent damage if possible. So completely different strategies, but I think both of them have very strong chances to beat the L640 list. However, kind of as I mentioned earlier, even if you have good chances, you gotta win twice, and there is definitely going to be
Yeah.
some amount of luck involved in both of these matches.
Yeah,
I
absolutely,
think.
right? Dian has 2 chances now, and all they need is an L640 and some good buffs in the starting hand.
Mm-hmm. Some
So there's a
use
good chance, but
some use aces potentially.
yeah.
Let me double check and make sure that they are playing use ace.
Yeah, they do.
But
They do.
yeah,
They have all the
so
buff packages available for usage for I'm always saying supply drop, but I think it's not called like that.
supply shipment.
Supply shipment, see? Supply drop is the other one
Yeah,
that was
so
recorded, right? Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're supposed to call it use ace or US ace or because it stands for US Army Corps of Engineers. But somebody who's more familiar with the Army Corps of Engineers would have to tell me what they call it. Do they just say use ace? I don't know. Um,
I think it's
so yeah,
called
I guess.
USEC actually. That's what my intel is telling me.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So I think
Interesting.
Blue Blast called it like that. Okay.
Interesting.
We just call it US Ace, okay?
So yeah, so I guess let's. I don't know. Well, what are some things that could? Okay, so okay, I know. So as far as this L640 list goes, the fact that there's not a single other Italian card play or a single other Italian card played really confuses me because I think that there's genuinely some quite good options that are possible contenders for being worth playing.
What do you have in mind?
Those are Kanona.
Okay.
Some people play it. I don't personally like it, but if you buff it with like 99th, having a 3/5 artillery is pretty crazy. You can play Mare Nostrum, which is great removal for a deck that otherwise, I mean, US is not known for its removal package, so that's always an option. Dealing 3, because you're almost always going to be having more health than your opponent, right? So having one cost deal 3 damage to any enemy unit is pretty good. We know that air superiority is like a fantastic card. And so it's like an air superiority that's almost always online. And then of course there's the Machi, there's the 6 cost 5/6, and that can really close out games. And it looks like Dion did not get the luck that they wanted as far as going first and having those early L640s and
Ooh, not a single
and
one. Even if an almost full mulligan here. And card advantage. They did not find an L640. But I find the 164s, 2 of them, and the Greyhound. But nothing to buff them, actually.
surely Head is gonna mulligan the FW here. I mean, you'd be crazy not to mulligan the FW. Alright, so Head is going to contest the front line early with this Jaeger. It's gonna prevent a turn 1 164th out of Dion, so that's really just the purpose that it's serving right now. And if you're Head, I mean, I think I don't know, does it make more sense to push the front line and prevent a future supply shipment? Because it would be hard to dislodge the Greyhound with your hand, so I don't know. I
I
think
think it makes
both,
sense, yeah. I think you want to
yeah,
keep this deck out of the front line.
yeah.
Especially since there already is an US unit and your
Mhm.
opponent has Shermans available and 3 health is a lot to kind of get through here. But not enough with the 164s being available, buffing the Greyhound. And there's the autocannon.
Yep, and unfortunately, because Dion's going second, they just don't have the time that they need to get this Greyhound big enough and also able to kill the Autocanone. So Head's gonna trade out with that Hellcat, and now Dion doesn't have any sort of blitz units that can reach that back line. It was kind of an all or nothing gamble on the Greyhound, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but looking really rough for Dion here.
Also, the Grumman Goose is not really helping here since it's still covered, but covered is really bad against artillery and bombers. So that autocannon will eat everything they just deploy.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess you can doubles brigade if you so choose.
Turboat's brigade
Seems
phase, take them out, attack with the autocannon. Could also maybe utilize 35T and keep your Devil's Brigade.
Yeah, you could play 22nd and double trade with 35T. You wouldn't actually get the draw off of the 22nd until your next turn, but at least it sets you up to play like a Devil's Brigade next turn. And it looks like that's what Head is doing. Saying, alright, I mean, I have the Devil's Brigade, I have the Autocanone. As long as I take out all your stuff in the front line, you can't supply shipment. And then
Oh, there it is.
there it is.
And still no buffing order. That's interesting.
The menace itself.
Not even the 99s.
And a Sherman, a raw Sherman. I mean, yeah, you have to contest this Autocanone, so. And this Admiral Hipper is brutal.
That hits hard.
Taking an extra turn. Take an extra turn.
Yeah, we might just see the Sherman coming back. Nothing else to do here
Yep.
for Dion. But Heinkel plus autocannon takes care of that. Or just the plain autocannon with the pincer effect.
Oh my gosh, what a draw. What a draw. That is huge. And this really is it for Dion because now
Even strat
now
bombing is
even the
not good
strat
enough,
bombing
right?
isn't good enough. I mean, you can M10 to remove the pincer and the buff, and then try and set up a strat bombing the next turn, which looks like that's what Dion is opting for.
So do you go Grum and Goosey or Iron Man after that?
I'm not sure if you play any of them, but if you are gonna play one, then Iron Man for sure, because Grum and Goose is just gonna get eaten by that artillery.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no! Oh! I was expecting the for freedom to go on the outer canone, so it's actually going on the Heinkel, which means that this strat bombing is still live. So now we get to
Yeah.
see strat bombing push up Iron Man. I mean,
Was not really a good
harder.
play around strat bombing.
Hmm.
But still a good front line here for Head.
Yeah, this does look like it is almost certainly going to be Head's game.
Yeah, I actually don't see how Dian comes back here. The Gum Goose is not doing too much. The Sherman not having blitz.
No. And Head knows that every single covert unit that comes down from here on out is Grum and Goose. So it's just going to get instantly attacked the minute that it gets played. It'll just get traded off with the Devil's Brigade every single time they play it. There's no surprise factor left.
And that's it. That's game number 2 going to Head here.
Alright, so Head is back in it. We are going to get a tense game 3 between US Britain and US Italy. The battle of, do you go for maximum aggression or maximum control and stall and value?
Yeah, they're like the
So,
most opposite you can make out of Brit decks, right? A
yep.
really ramp heavy deck and a really aggressive list. So we will see which list will be superior after match number 3 here. And who's our first finalist for today? Can't wait. Dion not with the greatest starting hand in the second match here. They're really hoping to find an L640 and a supply shipment in the starting hand. That would be the perfect opening sequence, I guess. Or is there anything better you can find? Sure, some USEC, however we want to call it, as well, to get an L640 as big as possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
All right, another really bad starting hand here for Dion. Head not finding any ramp cards. Oh, wow. Okay, at least something for Dion. L640. 2 USEC.
That is a lot. And Head does not have the turn 2 War Machine. No, certainly not. I mean, Head always draws the turn 2 War Machine between these next 2 cards, right? Like, are
He
we,
has one more
like,
chance. I
there's
mean,
no
this.
way, right?
Ui. So the first answer here for Head is on turn 4. I mean, it can play
Depth charges
the
is good. Oh,
research.
Jaska was good.
That
Jaska's
prevents
good.
some damage.
Yeah, Jaska into depth charges seems reasonable.
Going
I
to
think
bounce
half
this?
track. Yep.
Yeah. He knows the Glamour Boys are still a few turns away, so there's actually makes sense to bounce the Jesco.
Yeah, and so
Goes for
Dion can
depth
spend this
charges.
turn getting everything in the front line, get everything set up for next turn. Ooh, a Grum and Goose. Getting a Grum and Goose down does seem really nice. Yeah.
So, I think you kill the L640 here, right? Overplaying the Glamour Boys, or do you play the Glamour Boys?
I would play the Glamour Boys because, as you said before, your covert unit is not retreated.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, nothing changes. I mean, you have to spend 1 extra credit on moving up half track again, but oh,
Oh,
and what a top
wow.
deck! And you can operate everything, draw 3 cards. Oh my gosh. And this is what I meant when I said, you know, you can prevent the high roll once, but are you realistically going to be able to prevent the high roll
What a
twice?
top deck. Insane.
Oh my gosh. That's
it.
crazy. I mean, it's not quite it, but it's pretty close.
Oh. No. Okay, it was just a lag. I thought it just froze again.
Yeah, just a little bit of lag. And so now, yeah, this is really Head's only option is use this to get into the front line. Anything in the front line against this deck basically has guard. And Dion is considering throwing down 2 gooses, and this way you're guaranteed to get in for 2, and then you can look to find a little bit more damage later in the game. Remember that no orders actually can kill these gooses, so knowing that Head doesn't have any way to attack the front line, except I think maybe Hellcat. But yeah, so this goose is gonna stick. And then after that, I mean, you just have to find 2 more damage.
How do you do this? I mean, healing coming down here.
Iron Man is pretty decent here. This is
Oh,
tough.
this
Very
was
tough.
really
You
a
can.
strong turnaround there from Head, pushing that 3-6 to the front line.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how he actually did it, because there was a little bit of lag, but clearing the front line here, making space
And
for.
I think I would have gone for M10 on the Jasko, but maybe you keep M10 for the other Glamour boys. We do have information that Dion doesn't have. So.
Sure, makes sense. I think they're a bigger issue than that one Jesco.
Mm-hmm.
And Head really with an okay hand here. Can push the 121st to the front line maybe? Try to find
Yeah,
better answers with MI5.
you can start with a Bomber Mafia and then go for the 121st. And that way your 121st doesn't die to this
Ooh.
4-1.
Havoc
Oh,
is not
Havoc
too
is
bad.
really good here. Because you know that this is Iron Man, because you've seen the 2 gooses. That is really tempting, especially because it allows you to play War Machine on top of it, which is just going to make your ability to turn the game around later even better.
Looks like the Head decides to push up the 121st. Covering that Iron Man there.
And so it's situations like these where I feel that the Machi, the 5-6 Blitz plane, is really valuable.
Yeah, would make absolutely sense for the late game, yeah. But that is also a pretty strong play here. Bringing Head down to 2 now, with a 5-8 in the front line.
Yeah, Head
Oh, double
can
firebomb.
play double Firebomb.
That was actually a really good top deck. As good as the M10 was earlier for Dian, as good was this firebomb.
Even without it, though, you could always play Havoc, Firebomb, and then attack with your engineers, or play, you know, some other combination of cards that's similar.
Sure, now has the potential to full board clear here. Unfortunately, the damage got
Not
split.
quite.
To get out of the outrage.
Yeah, this will be very interesting to see. 'Cause
Probably
it
looking
could...
for that one that heals your HQ for 3. I think that
Yeah, and
would
it
be the
looks
best
like
option here.
this next card that Dion draws is realistically
Oh,
gonna be their last for a while. I would really like to see Dion play the Sherman here. Yeah, and they will, which means that the MI5 is going to be blanked a little bit. 3 cost, draw 1 card is not super great. So Head needs to contest the front line with this Devil's Brigade, and then also...
and it can just Bomber Mafia into Havoc,
yeah,
clear the
Bomber
board.
Mafia into Havoc, yep.
And then, I think... Dian
Then
is
you're just hoping that Dion
kinda...
doesn't
yeah.
top deck strat bombing, really.
Or anything else with Blitz. Did I play Hellcats?
Let me check. Dion
No
plays
Hellcat.
no Hellcat. Which I think makes sense because it is really expensive and you are really looking to be as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah, it's down coming down to strat bombing now. No strat bombing this turn.
Yeah,
And
this
Heads
supply
find
shipment is
another
just not
copy
it.
of 330 seconds. So now next turn strat bombing is no longer lethal.
Yeah, that is true. Does Dion have any bullets units that have more than one base attack?
I don't think
And
so.
the answer is no, not that I
Only
know
has the
of.
Scout Car Greyhound. They only have one attack.
Yeah,
so...
Scout Car Greyhound L640.
Oh, that's the strat bombing. No.
No, that's unfortunate.
Oh.
That is unfortunate. But you know what this creates? Oh no, and like oh no, the Jasco is silenced,
Yeah.
is suppressed, which does mean that and Devil's Brigade can end it. So
Oh yeah, that's correct. 2
and I
outside
don't
for
think we've
Dion.
seen any Devil's
Oh
Brigade
no.
out of Oh no! Oh, that's
What is
crazy.
that? What a back and forth here. Oh my lord.
That's crazy. Was that off of yeah, that was off of the V25, yeah.
That was from
Wow,
the
well
bomber
this is
mafia.
it. I mean, Head is going to reverse sweep Dion and you know, unless a miracle happens. Head is reverse sweeping Dion and we will have our first OCC finalist.
Yeah, since strat bombing is out, and I think Head is doing everything to push to the front line here, and both Grum and Goose are out, there's nothing to reach the support line here from Head
No.
for Dion.
Yep.
So that was really a back and forth match here. Absolutely worst match number 3, and I think we have Head, although we started with some pretty strong technical issues into match number 1 here, or into game number 1. Buffing the 121st. This game is over, and Head is our first finalist for today.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Head is really just us, right? You start off with technical difficulties, and then you come back stronger
And
than ever,
stronger, yeah.
undefeatable.
Exactly.
So, congratulations to Head. Looking forward to seeing them in the finals. Yeah, what a set. I mean, Head was right that the L640 deck just simply wasn't scary enough to ban. So,
Yeah, I'm really surprised how we could perform, right? Even with this pretty strong opening there from Dian in match number 3 with L640 into 3 USAC, it was still not good enough. Did not find the follow-up, and then, yeah, just fell behind when the L640 died and lost the match.
yeah, so, I really do wonder. I really do wonder if things could have been different if Dion played Machi or some of the other Italian cards. I just don't think that L640 is quite good enough to justify playing Italy unless you're also doing something else with Italy, you know?
Yeah. Makes sense.
So we will have our next match, and we will flip it back to our other lovely co-casters, Bubbles and Jking. And yeah, so we will have Noan and Turbocat next, and the winner of those will move on to face Head in our grand finals.
Hello and welcome back. I am joined by the Jking 7 on my side. And we have I believe it is a Turbo Cat versus Noan 5 match. And we're going to take a quick peek at these decks, which is going to be done by Mr. Jking 7.
Yeah, so I'm very excited for this match because, as we saw earlier, both of these players won 2-0 against sort of the standard lineup for this tournament. But they have won 2-0 in very different ways. So Noan did so by bringing a Japan-Poland deck, where you have the aggressive components of Japan, the Jagro, the fast starts, the expansions, and then you pair it with this Legions package that no one seems to be really liking right now. And this is going to help give your deck a little bit more sustainability, a little bit more draw, a little bit more value generation if it needs to go that far. then his second deck is quite similar in that regard, where it's a very standard archetype that we're used to. It's the US Frontline package with the Shermans, the 99ths, the 164ths, and so on. But again, with this Legions package, where you are just trying to give yourself a little extra more value. And then you have a couple spicy cards in there, like Unity of Strength, to make up for the lack of some of the German options like Blitzkrieg. And then last but not least, you have Noan 5's air deck, where he's taken quite a different approach to this with Soviet ally, bringing in the Bloody Sickles, the Patriotic Firestorm, the Chaikas, and most importantly, Claim the Skies. That card really was able to carry him to victory against his first round opponent. So let's hopefully for him, it will continue to carry him to victory against Turbocat. And Turbocat, on the other hand, had a very different approach to the decks. So you see his first deck, he has US Britain Ramp. And we've seen a bit of US Britain Ramp so far in this tournament, and there's certainly a lot of similar cards in this deck as are in those decks. I'm obviously just like the regular Ramp, the War Machines, the War Bonds, and then you have some removal, the Fire Bombs, the Bomber Mafias. But we do see TurboCat does run Carpet Bombing, which is a notable absence in some of the other decks. And maybe this Carpet Bombing is what has helped TurboCat reach the semifinals, where people with similar lists have faltered, giving it just a little bit more AoE. And you see the Green Howards on top of the Glamour Boys, giving him a little bit more guard. So just a little bit more defensive, and against this very it's comparable to the Birdo's very aggressive self-damage list that we saw earlier, where you are running a lot of these cheap cards, the T-35s, the T-80s, the Winter Warfares, the Sickles, the Red Dawns, where you're running all these cheap self-damage cards, and then he has the 34th Guards as the payoff. But also in this deck, he has 2 push. So at any point, if he brings his opponent low enough, if he finds the right cards, he can also just push down his opponent, and then the British cards help him get there. There's a little bit of healing with the fortification and a naval power. And then there's these 3 copies of the Reche, which I'm very excited to see how this is going to work. It has some good synergies with cards like the Yak, the T-80, the T-35, these units that are able to deal damage separate from just regular attacking that could potentially snowball a Reche. And then last but not least, you have Britain-Poland, but this is not Exile, unlike the other Britain-Polands we've seen. This is Britain-Poland just full-on control. He has 2 Uprisings with the Legions package. He has a lot of intel cards to get the most value out of these Tarnows. And then he has some of the classic Brit control elites that you love to see, the Wave After Waves, the Churchill Avres, on top of a Carpet Bomb. And so he really loves his board clears in this deck, and it's just going to try to keep clearing the board, and then eventually build a board of his own with these Legions and the Tarnows to end his opponent. So very different approaches to Poland, very different approaches to their lineups as a whole, and I'm very excited to see how these worked. How do you think these are going to pair into each other, Bubbles?
It's going to be very interesting, especially to see which decks get banned. But there is something more pressing on my mind, which is that the 15th Recce, which is a British... Why are you putting this Italian spin on it? The 15th Recce! What is going on here?
I'm sad we don't get to see more L640, because I really wanted to call it Usace.
So we do have the bans, so we're going to get to look at the bans, and then we will sort of take a look at the matchup based on what decks are left. So we're going to see US banned from both players. So we do get to see this Britain-Soviet deck from TurboCat, which I'm really excited for. This looks really unique, and there's some really interesting combos with the 15th Recce. You have these units that hit your HQ each turn, and that is actually going to, or at least we believe it will, buff the Recce every single... You see, you've even got me talking like it now. You're going to buff the Recce every single turn. And then we do get to see both Poland decks from Noan, which is going to be very exciting. We're going to get to see how this Poland deck operates a little bit more. We didn't get to see as much of it as we wanted to earlier, unfortunately, so I'm really excited to see these decks in action once again. Who do you feel like is favored purely based on the decks?
Based on the decks, I think I would have to give the edge to Noan 5. They just feel a little bit more straightforward. It feels like they have simpler game plans. And I think he's just going to have he's going to be able to adapt to different game situations much better than these decks from TurboCat, whereas TurboCat has the ramp deck and then this very interesting Soviet deck that are able to do some wild things, but how often and consistently they're able to do these, I'm not sure. But here we are getting into game one, and Noan has no shortage of 164ths if he wants them, but he does have to worry about Winter Warfare from the opponent's side.
Now we see Turbo with the Winter Warfare, and if you can generate the guard for this 456 rifles, you now also have the stiff upper lip to generate some draw. How much of this is okay? Well, no one's keeping all of it. The question is for me, James, do you agree with that? Should he have kept all of it?
I don't think I would have kept all three 164s. I think they're reasonable to keep. Some of them, and I think from his perspective, what it might be is that if you look at TurboCat's deck list, there's only one copy of Winter Warfare. So maybe from Noah's perspective, you're just willing to roll the dice and say you don't have your only copy.
You have
although,
to go stretch the line here,
yeah.
right? You cannot risk putting them down. Now we
Yeah.
see.
And he's going to go for the stretch the line, and this might give intel on the Winter Warfare.
Gives intel on the Recce, which TurboCat could potentially go for next turn. He doesn't necessarily have to put down this Winter Warfare straight away. What's interesting is we have stiff upper lip and we have no shortage of guards, but we don't actually have many guards from hand. Most of our guards gain guard after a certain setup. So it's going to be really interesting to see if that holds TurboCat back at all with these stiff upper lips, because you can't go guard draw. You have to go guard, wait a turn, wait for the activation, then go for the draw. We do also see the push in hand already for TurboCat. Is TurboCat going to be solely looking to end the game with the push OTK combo? Or is there the possibility that TurboCat is just going to try and get some big stats on the board? Or are these legions just going to be way too big for TurboCat to outstat?
I think it's going to come. I think he's going to play very reactively, and we already see him starting to do that, dropping the Winter Warfare and just going for the stiff upper lip, try to find different cards in his hand. If he'd gotten off to a very strong start, slamming down a couple 34th guards early in the game, I think he would just go all in and try to win on board presence. But seeing these huge walls of legions coming out from your opponent, and now you're one card off being able to kill your opponent.
Is turbo finding these push tools. We do see the T80 in hand, so you can go for this T80 and this stiff upper lip and curve out very nicely. I'm also interested to find out how the T80 interacts with the 15th Recce. I've not seen it a lot, so I don't really know how these things interact on a micro level. But are we popping the Red Dawns? We're saying screw the combo. I'm popping a Red Dawn and putting this guy in the front line. And realistically, no one cannot trade with this effectively unless there's a unity of strength.
He does trade 1-for-1 with Devil's Brigade in this situation, but that's no one's entire turn. He's not developing intel. He's not really developing any more units. He's just trading out with this 2-cost unit. And then...
Why do you think we see TurboCat deciding to play the Red Dawn? Is it because there's only one push in the deck? So playing to this push OTK might just be too slow. And there are another there's another 2 Red Dawns in the deck. So statistically, by the time you find this push, you should have found another Red Dawn. And you just want to convert that into board tempo, or is there something else at play?
I think that it might just be he wants to go on tempo. I think it's so easy for that last push to just be in the bottom 5 cards of your deck, and suddenly, if you just keep going for it, you will eventually lose on board. And he now goes for the T-34 Recce, and
it's a 5/5.
Yeah, we were talking about this when we were looking at sort of behind the scenes when we were looking at the deck list, and I don't think any of us here had ever seen this interaction before. And we were talking, well, it's going to give +1/+1 or +2/+2, and it gives +2/+2, and I think that's why TurboCat is playing this deck.
This is such a smart combo. And now we see with the evasive action, which can shut down the M4 Sherman, that could be a real problem here for Noan. We don't see the Red Dawn beforehand, so no longer able to Red Dawn this I can't remember that card's name all of a sudden. Now we see
hitting down the PIR.
Establishing a front line with an 8-8.
Oh, the punish draw is actually quite big here, because this is going to let him trade just 2 of these intel cards in, and he hits the 50-50.
He hits it. However, there's a 34-foot hand still. There's a guy growing 2 each turn. You have to deal with this board.
Yeah. And there's not really any... It's looking hard to draw with these Shermans in hand moving forward, and other than that, you have no intel, no Tarnows. If you're Noan, you really have to go all in on these Shermans, so what's the best way to be able to draw with Sherman moving forward?
I feel like your main win con now, if you're Noan, is Turbocat running out of cards before you do. But like you said, with 2 Shermans in hand, it's going to be real slow for Noan as 5, and it's going to give Turbocat a lot of time.
He's just throwing up this Legions as a sacrifice, keep the 456 out of the front line.
Now, there is the potential here. Is he just going to go for it? Going all in, putting him down to 6 HP. Puts down the 34, and he's saying it's now or never, I'm killing you.
I really like this. He could have even gone for the Reke that turn.
Oh,
that is rough.
No, Noan 5 with a slow and dead hand. And the evasive action doesn't even matter anymore. You can't trade that.
He has 3 half tracks to delay the inevitable. Only 1 M10 not in hand. That's essentially his only out.
Finds the bloody sickle. So you are able to sickle the 1-drop. Considering going for the trade.
He might be worried about his own HQ total at this point.
I mean, strap bombing could kill him. If he sickles and doesn't get rid of this guy, a strap bomb kills him.
Yeah, and the fact that he played the Reke on the 456, I think, shows that he is trading off the T-35 this turn. But I think he now realizes that it also heals. Oh, do you just go for it?
Hit for 8 and sack the guy player attack.
Yeah.
Oh. Noan 5. Unity is not what you need. I mean, it can buy you a turn, right, actually? No.
No, because there's no other infantry. No. There's only 1 infantry. That's just over.
Turbocat. I gotta say, that is my favorite game. That is my favorite deck. That was so much fun.
And the crazy thing is, not just on the deck building stage, but also in the actual gameplay, figuring out the line there to make sure you don't risk dying to strap bombing, but also making sure that you don't give your opponent extra healing. Because if he, that's the reason he traded into the Sherman. Because if he trades into the 142nd, he's giving Noan 2 extra healing, and maybe Noan can come back from there. Excellently navigated game from Turbocat.
That was an impressive showing. And that is a completely unique and original deck. I'm impressed. I'm just going to be honest. I'm impressed. And now we see the US mirror. We've got US Britain ramp against US Poland legions. Now, Noan having a relatively good hand here with the Tarno, a lot of 2-drops. The half track's quite nice. But Turbocat going first and having War Machine with the Glamour Boys to back it up. How do you feel just based on these openers?
I think the key card of this matchup is the one we see in Turbocat's hand right now, and he immediately adds the B-24J. He knows no one has intel. He knows he's going to see it anyways eventually, so he might as well just add it to hand. And we talked about it against Nuff. I think Noan banned Nuff's US deck for this exact reason. He's terrified of the power the B-24J has against Noan's list.
Now, Turbocat able to get the War Machine, a really nice start. Noan prioritizing the PIR. Is able to get the 3-1, meaning there should be some good damage coming out. However, Glamour Boys, Bomber Mafia, B-24J, If Turbocat can just survive this early onslaught, which I expect he'll be able to, there is a lot happening in Turbocat's hand.
But on the flip side, no one has the half track in hand. He has the 2 Devil's Brigade and the Sherman, and these are cards that they have deployment effects. The power is not the passive effects that can be suppressed. So even though his deck is quite weak to AoE suppress, his hand is not. And it looks like no one is playing to that out. No one is seeing his hand and just putting on the pressure, knowing that he can't count on huge voids of legions in the future. And half track does exactly that. Return Glamour Boys, he can replay it for the deployment effect, but now there's a 5-3 in the front line, an extra trigger
It's
on
a
the
lot
PIR.
of damage, but this Carpet Bomb is going to absolutely decimate this board. I think we need to see this Sherman come out. You can go for the Karas to get it out of carpet range.
But it's going to go for the value trade. That's the
No.
point
You
of the
can
Karas.
go for the value trade here, Noan.
And the intel hits the Carpet Bomb, so now he knows. Oh, that's you. I think there's an 100% chance no one would have gone for it. There's 1 carpet in the deck. You don't play around it. But Noan, this is a very important learning opportunity for people who want to play intel decks. Always look at your intel cards. The cards you have intel on your opponent before playing.
B24J coming out now. This will stop Noan's advance. Noan is able to output 6 damage, but it will be his entire turn to do so. And with the Carpet Bomb there, it's not worth going for it. I expect we'll see Sherman coming out from Noan.
Yeah, it's the only thing you can play from your hand that doesn't immediately die to Carpet Bombing. And you also have intel on the Bomber Mafia, so you know that's going to be unlocked in just 1 turn.
Gonna go for the 1/6/4. You will get the buff from this. Deciding to buff the Sherman. Where is this 2 damage going?
I think at this point, looking at your opponent's hand, I think you just have to send it face. Although, if he hits the Bomber, it means that Turbocat can't just play Carpet Bombing, or else the Sherman can then trade down the Bomber on the following turn.
From Turbocat's perspective, if the Sherman is killing the Bomber, yeah, you're losing your Bomber, but you have a lot of AoE in hand, and that's a lot of damage being saved. Turbocat, with the Jasko, able to go guard Jasko trade and just play this a little bit slower.
And you can feel just how comfortable he is in this matchup in this game from this point. He knows he is winning just by the speed of his plays. He knows no one can't really do much that won't play into this Carpet Bombing. And if Turbocat doesn't even play the Carpet Bombing this turn and no one just plays out more 2 health things, then he can just play the Bomber Mafia instead. He doesn't need to play out the Carpet Bombing. So he's greeding on this, but it's greeding in a good position. This is a good type of greed. And there's not a lot no one can do against it. He has the Tar now, but the Tar now is useless if he can't kill this Bomber.
Now, the Karas is a 4/4. However, what does it matter? Turbo can clear board, right? Bomber Mafia, and then you can go for the trade afterwards.
Yeah, and picking up the 332nd.
3 excellent options.
Yeah, this is not the invaders that you and I might be used to seeing on ladder.
Gonna save the Havoc. I half expected us to see the Havoc there, because with the reduced op cost on both bombers, you can trade and hit face for 6.
The benefit of holding back the Havoc is, 1, it's hidden information from Noan. Noan still has to play around a second B24J, he has to play around B17, B24D. And also, it allows Turbocat to get out this Milk Truck, a unit you can feasibly push into the front line to try to stop additional Shermans. And no one can bring these legions out of carpet range, but 1 will die to the Bomber. And
you can also
just
Scrap Bomb now. Turbocat finding so much AoE.
And yeah, just we've seen a lot of US Brit ramp decks, but I think Turbo has clearly found the best way to tech it.
Turbo just seems so comfortable as well. He just seems so in control of this game. there hasn't really been a point where Turbo has seemed out of their depth, and Noan just sort of getting held back. Interesting, we see the United We Stand, as it will not ramp Turbo, but it will ramp Noan, as Turbo was going to increase to 12 credits anyway. I think this is mainly just to stop Noan going for the trade and move up the front line and accepting the downside of ramping Noan by 1.
Yeah, I think the idea with just hitting the HQ in this situation is no one has almost no ways of dealing with this bomber, so you're just putting him on a 2-turn clock, because no one also doesn't have, well, has almost no HQ gain in this deck. And the other thing is, it's incredibly difficult for no one to keep this 4-1 out of carpet range, and you assume that you're probably just going to do carpet attack HQ with the bomber in the future anyways. So I actually really love this heads-up play from Turbocat. It's showing that not only just has he gotten some good draws, has he gotten a good matchup, but he also just knows
Hits
how to
the
play the deck.
convoy as well. That was... No one here is hoping for the Havoc, finds the second one, gets to the Havoc. Carpet is still existing though, and half track will mean that Noan isn't just dead to this bomber. However, US research can offer a nuclear solution if Turbocat requires it.
And this is actually a very interesting situation, because if you hit the HQ, it requires the half track to come out, and then you can suppress this board. Whereas you could have also developed research twice to try to reach nukes faster, but then
Do you just go
your opponent
depth
just going
charges?
down.
If you go depth charges, that means you can go B24J and carpet bomb post half track. Hit face for 6, develop a depth charge.
The depth charge would actually, he wouldn't have enough, because that would be 14 credits. So I would have liked to just hit
Sorry, yeah,
you there.
Yeah, you are correct. Now we see researching the depth charges anyway, but looks like going to save it.
Yeah.
If the B24 gets bounced, it just gives him a little bit of time to redevelop this board. It means you don't have to worry about Unity's strength lethal from hand. Take in mind, Noan's got a big hand at this point and has been drawing for a long time. Turbocat has to be aware that there is the possibility of 1 and maybe even 2 Unity's strength sitting in Noan's hand. Just one guy in the front line can lethal Turbocat out of nowhere. Now, we see Noan doesn't have this, but Turbocat still has to play around it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I would have liked to have seen this bomber hit the HQ, is because what is your opponent's option other than half track? But the worry might have been that no one would have a 142nd to heal 2 to get up to 7 HQ. Or possibly that no one would have a card like Strategic Bombing in combination with a Devil's Brigade and take out the bomber. And that would be worst case scenario, because suddenly your opponent just pushes up 3 legions. So he's sort of taken the middle ground approach, where he's now able to take out a good chunk of these units. He trades out the Sherman, keeps the bomber alive, but he's unable to attack with it here. And things are starting to look more and more in Noan's favor. He's not quite out of the woods yet, but you've seen most of the AoEs gone from Turbocat's hand.
Yeah.
And just looking at the hand sizes, Turbocat has no card draw. Although actually, technically, Green Howards can draw with Pathfinders, which is a very fun interaction I haven't seen before. But
I don't think I've seen that either. So, Turbocat, we've seen most of the card draw already, because you can only fit so much in when you've got Britain ally. We've seen research already. There's first Airborne, which can do 2 damage to face. We've seen Strap Bombing. Firebomb can do a little bit of damage to face, and then there is also Bomber Mafia. But there are only so many ways of finding damage. I think there is a second production order in Turbocat's deck, so I really want to see Turbocat bring Noan down low enough where this other production order is now enough to close out the game.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And there's also, for a single copy of For Freedom, that I don't believe has been played, so even if your opponent is able to get 2 healing in somewhere.
Isn't going for the Green Howards. Oh, don't Green Howards afterwards.
Oh, he might be playing away on Stars and Stripes, so he doesn't want to play out a 3rd unit. So he might just push the Jasko here.
I could certainly see the push Jasko being Yeah, and now, I mean, even if this half track comes out, you are getting rid of this Tano.
And there's the first unity of strength. So even if one of these units is suppressed, if it's in the front line, it can push a lot of damage. Not quite lethal damage, but it can set up a 2-turn lethal very easily through this entire board being suppressed. But the issue no one has is this bomber cannot end. No one can't end the turn with this bomber on board unless he's just praying that the Skytrain is enough to protect him.
It would certainly be a gamble, especially with a firebomb lurking about. It's just a little bit risky.
Yeah. And at this point, he might go for the half track and the Jasco to also play around the second production order that you mentioned. Because even if Skytrain gets suppressed, it's still a fighter. So
Yep.
you don't have to worry a ton about that.
The clock is ticking. Noan has to work out how they're playing this.
He's just going all in
relies
on the Skytrain.
First, not quite enough to clear this.
Yeah, if you had one more damage for the Skytrain.
Still gonna go 1 damage to everything.
And because of the way Retreat works, it does push the Jasco in between the HQ and the Bomber, which is quite huge because it means TurboCat now can't simultaneously guard the Bomber and the HQ, so he's choosing to just drop the P51.
And depth charges, this is a problem for Noan. You are able to put down guards. Now, I do believe we have to see this P51 bounced, because this card draw is just too much to deal with.
But he's going to be able to clean up this B24J and develop a very threatening board. And TurboCat can do P51 Green Howards, and we see Noan. We see immediate answers for this Green Howards. We don't see any more immediate answers for this Green Howards in Noan's hand, but you're feeling a lot less comfortable.
If you can find an Engineers off the Skytrain at the end of turn, that could potentially set you up with a lethal.
Yeah, the Skytrain is going to be generating an additional infantry, and at this point, number of infantry on board is going to start to matter quite a bit.
However, doesn't want it. Puts down a stretch of the line instead. Buff these up. Get them outside of the range of a Bomber Mafia.
I'm very interested he doesn't... Oh no, I suppose the half-track was played that turn, so yeah, he doesn't really have another choice. And Green Howard's coming down. M10, and it's...
Turbo pretty much like completely out of options here. Now, Noan could play the Pathfinders first before killing the Green Howards, and that would generate a draw for TurboCat. So Noan has to look out for this.
At this point, that might just be TurboCat's only out is Firebomb to kill Skytrain at some point, and then B20 production order into B24D. Maybe he can do second Bomber Mafia into B24D. But again, Skytrain sticking around is causing so many issues for TurboCat at this point. And, you know, he's played so many AoEs, but there's not enough AoEs in the world to deal with this board anymore.
And look at the size of this unit. I mean, a production order... Okay. Never mind.
That's just game.
That is just game, and Noan able to equalize it to 1-1.
And I really just have to wonder if this all came down to that one turn where TurboCat could have hit the HQ and instead hit one of the 3 legions on board. Because we see Noan is on 5 health now, so obviously you can do some very simple math and say if he hit HQ, we would have had 6 less health and would have won, but obviously Noan would have played things differently. But do you think TurboCat had a potential win there that maybe he missed by playing a little bit too slow by not giving Noan's deck enough respect? Or do you think Noan was climbing back either way?
I feel like you had a potential win either way. I don't think TurboCat's fate was sealed the moment they didn't hit face there. I think there was still a lot of things that could have gone differently that would have meant TurboCat won that game. You know, they could have found, if they had one more point of damage and were able to do with the Skytrain,
If it was just
they
Firebomb instead of that 101st Airborne in hand, kill Skytrain, Bomber can hit face.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that can go very slightly different, and TurboCat takes that. Now, I think the question really is what's a slightly higher. I think we're looking at like a 5% difference in win rate between those two plays, but I think either way, Noan it wasn't a guaranteed win. TurboCat could have come back.
Yeah, it's at this level, with these quality of plays and these quality of decks, it really just comes down to risk management. How much risk are you willing to put on? And going for the HQ would have been very risky from TurboCat, and Noan just going for that play of leaving up the Skytrain is the only thing between you and the Bomber hitting HQ for lethal. Very risky play. And sometimes risks pay off, and sometimes they don't. In Noan's case, it paid off very well for him last game. But here, seems to be taking a bit of a risk that your opponent doesn't have supply priorities, because if TurboCat didn't have supply priorities, this game would be over very, very fast. But of course, TurboCat does.
Now,
So this is gonna get
TurboCat
cleared up.
developing the bomber here actually means that Punish is far more likely to hit something you have intel on.
That is a very good point, and I think probably a point that TurboCat hasn't really considered. Just Punish has not been in the game very long. You're not playing against a lot of Punish decks on ladder. This is probably just an interaction that he really hasn't thought of, and that is one of the things that is working to Noan's advantage just in this tournament as a whole, bringing these types of decks. Is
What
people's
is
just
it going to hit? I
unfamiliarity.
assume we're seeing it come out this turn. It will buff 2 Legions and is a guaranteed draw and discard. Now, you want it to hit either the B-24 or the Bomber Mafia.
And hits the B-24, and
Double Bomber Mafia, though. That could be troublesome here.
because of the nerf, it is going to take an additional turn for TurboCat to be able to play them if he wants the damage, and he most certainly wants the damage at this
No
point
one is
in the
going to
game.
have intel on it, though.
Yeah, and he has intel on one, and
Yeah,
if you're playing around one, you're playing around the other. But no one also knows that he has a turn, so he's going to get down this KARS, so that it's going to be able to generate him.
I want to see Yoko.
3
I want to
intel
see
effect.
Yoko move up this turn.
What's the thought process behind moving up the Yoko this turn?
The thought process was wrong in hindsight. That's why I didn't continue talking, because I looked at it. I was like, I disagree with myself. I'll let this one go.
Well, that's likely why we don't see Noan going for the Yokosuka last turn. He can play the section to intel up to a 6/6, trade out his Green Howards, but that will leave him open to Bomber Mafia plus supply priorities to clear out this board. So Noan might be trying to find a different play here. Maybe just playing a bit slower, maybe playing out the scouting party. What do you think here is Noan's best option with these 4 remaining
I don't
credits?
like the scouting party because Noan's hand is so big already. I feel like it doesn't give you what you need. And it does allow TurboCat to still clear your board. It just means that TurboCat has to be the one doing the trading. Because, sorry, I seem to be having some trouble with maths today.
And we see him go for this. The United We Stand pickup does mean that he can fully clear the board. And maybe Noan's idea was just trying to snowball out on the board. B24.
Hold on, though, the Mitchell could be really powerful.
Yeah, Mitchell here. It comes out on curve. You don't have to play the United We Stand. And limiting Noan's credit slots seems quite good. On the other, all 3 of these options are quite good in their own right. He chooses to go for the B24D in hand. He likes the blitz. And
Overdraw of the punish.
That's a card.
Kerr's gonna be very happy about that. Now, Noan, put down the Tano.
Goes for the 2 draws with the section 2, picking up. Well, the expansion's not really a card you want to see in your hand at this point. You have essentially access to your entire deck over the rest of this game.
The plus side of expansion is that they're very cheap to throw away. we see Turbo getting rid of the Tano. And that does put Noan in a slightly awkward position. However, with Shiden available, Turbo is able to answer this somewhat effectively.
Unlike the US deck, Noan's Japan Poland is much better suited to answer bombers. TurboCat can't expect to just have a single bomber carry the entire game. He has this Shiden, but then there's also other options like Desperate Measures, Bombing Raid, Shenano. And we've seen the Desperate
Measures, yeah.
But yeah, there's just more direct damage from hand than in the US deck, and that's even if you can get through the Shiden.
This ambush is going to be really awkward to deal with, right?
Yeah,
I mean, really,
wants
you
to
want
see another
ideally
Mitchell.
another Mitchell, yeah.
Chooses to start with the draw and picks up the 101st.
The perfect answer to the Shiden, and you can get something powerful in the front line, but also finds the other Mitchell. There's no shortage of answers here for Turbo. I may only have 3 and 4 cards in hand, but that's all I need.
Yeah, if you look at the cost of TurboCat's cards compared to the cost of Noan's cards, they have pretty similar costed hands.
Now we see Noan being put on the back foot in a slightly awkward position, might be relying on the Shenano procs, which is unreliable at best.
Shenano, I find Shenano since the nerf, it either hits all units or all HQ. It's never like what you expect. It's never a normal distribution. Chooses that he's just going to go for the KRS, the triple Legion's buff, adding more intel to hand. And TurboCat really wants to see those board clears that he had in the last game.
We've got to get this P51 down as well, right? It's a very slow card, but it offers a lot of value. However, without these half tracks available for Noan, you know that it's safe.
Yeah, and we see TurboCat thinking about killing the KRS with the 6-2 B24D. That's the only guaranteed way of killing it this turn, and that's not a unit you really want to stick. But at this point, you also should be thinking about, well, how many more Legions is my opponent even able to generate at this point? You've seen quite a few of the cards.
The question of Noan's hand size. This can be a real problem when you have a massive hand. It is just filled with these cards, and yes, they buff your Legions, but when you have like 9 cards in hand, you feel like you're paying 2k for your regular card draw that you get each turn.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good arguments that maybe TurboCat would be better suited in the situation with no one having a KRS and 1 4/4 Legions rather than 2 4/4 Legions with the KRS gone.
However, Noan does have to find a way of dealing with this backline. No Desperate Measures is available. Shenano offers reasonable odds. However, if you can guarantee success, you should not rely on the RNG instead.
Yeah, he's gonna draw looking for something like a bombing raid, maybe. Doesn't find it, and at this point, you just go for a massive Shenano. Odds are this does kill the B24D, but if it doesn't, things are looking pretty bad. If this leaves everything alive at a little health, and that's exactly what it does. It kills nothing.
The bomber from Matrix dodges the Shenano, survives on 1. And now it can get buffed by the P51. TurboCat in the position they want to be. This P51, which was dying anyway, soaking up so much of this damage. Now TurboCat is in such a strong position. Noan 5 needs the bombing raid and needs it quickly. Bombing raid plus the death triggers of some of these recons might be Noan's only way of getting rid of this bomber.
And what's actually really important here is TurboCat didn't find any of his guards. I believe there's 5 additional guards left in his deck that he wanted to see to guard up this 9/4, and he just didn't find any. He can't guard it, and this means is the bombing raid.
The front line needs the bombing raid real badly.
He's starting with Tar now, and this is putting quite a few eggs in very few baskets right now, because if you do not find that bombing raid off of the 1 draw, you can't kill the B24D, and that's exactly what happens. And
he's just
TurboCat's
saying, you know what? Have your B24. I'm going to have a lot of Legions on board.
Yep, goes for the section.
There's the bombing raid. You would have found it.
And if TurboCat can pick up a carpet bombing, suddenly things are looking quite bad.
Even a strap bombing would be real powerful here for Noan. Obviously,
Yeah.
not as insane as a carpet bomb. However, you take
Or
what you can get.
production order for a B-24J. There's quite a few good effects on board you'd
Yeah.
love to see suppressed. And do you think he's going to hit the HQ, or do you think he's going to hit the bomber?
I
Goes
think
for the
because you
HQ.
have the recon triggers on board, you can hit the HQ knowing the bomber's HP is most likely going to be taken down anyway.
Yeah, and we see the signal being picked up now, so maybe
Oh,
he could
I've
potentially go for a burn strat.
just realized that the milk truck was put in between the bomber and the HQ. Now, you can go for a Green Howards plus a Devil's Brigade, considering just going for the card draw instead.
I feel like this... Well, he's going to clear out the entire front line, it seems like. Now, I do wonder if he's taking this maybe just a little bit too slow. Because no one can just play out his entire hand. Like, at this point, you just take some risks.
And with a Type 94 and a Type 93, there's actually a good amount of damage being put down onto Turbo Cat this turn. Can take 5 damage to face, going to go down to 9, and Noan is going to be able to push a huge amount of Angry Legions into the front line.
Yeah, with the last
Signal in
recon,
hand,
2 5/5s, a 4/4, they're not dying to carpet, and then you can throw out a bunch of these other one-cost units and then signal, and suddenly you need to suppress the entire board, and then also clear the entire board. Turbo Cat might just come down to, does he top deck production order this turn?
considering going for the AA gun, if you put down AA gun, this means a suppressed production order bomber. It still gets put onto 1 HP, and this recon's death trigger will kill the bomber.
Doesn't find it. He can go for double glamours. He can go for double glamour and Green Howard.
Here, see my 3/6s.
And looking at Noan's deck, I mean,
He can just value trade each one.
That's true. He top decks another intel. This might be one of the last intel effects
for the burst damage.
That's also true. But if he does go for the value trades, it does mean Carpet Bomb suddenly does clear the entire board. And that's a lot of signal damage, but that's not game-winning signal damage with Sheet and
Noan's deck looking very thin.
Yeah. And you don't have any way of buffing the health. If a Carpet Bomb gets drawn here, yes, you're dealing 8 damage with Signal Regiment, but then, what, your opponent's on 11 health, and you have 3 cards in hand.
No Sheeden left in deck.
Desperate and Bombing Raid gone, too. If Carpet Bomb gets drawn here... You have to go for the
M5.
You have to go for it. And that delays its turn, and you can drop the War Bonds.
He's buying time. Plays the Intel War Bonds. It is the correct way to go.
If you're Noan here, you literally can't do anything. You just have to pass and pray.
You just pass the turn. You can't operate. You can't play cards. What's he thinking about? Finds a strap bombing.
Strap bomb and Pathfinders, but that can do a lot, but it doesn't.
I mean, you can clear the signal, and you can still afford to put down a Glamour Boys. It buys
you can stay alive. You can certainly stay alive.
And with signal gone, this means this Carpet Bomb is even more of a threat. 10 cards in hand and deck for Turbo Cat, 4 cards in deck for Noan.
And Noan will draw all 4. With Strap Bombing drawing 3 and then the natural draw, Noan will have access to all 4 remaining cards of his deck next turn. And it will just be all in on what's left of this board.
Now, is there any way Turbo Cat just deciding
Surely that's definitely the one you want to target, because that's the one you wanted to trade the blitzed Pathfinders in. There's no way of dealing damage to these. See, not playing the Strap Bombing.
No, just looking for this Carpet Bomb, all in on this Carpet Bomb. Audacity, an excellent find.
And I would have loved to see this Pathfinders just get traded out by triggering its Veteran on one of these other cards, like
preferably
the Type 94.
The 2/2.
Yeah, or the Artillery. The second Type 93 coming out.
This damage now from Noan. 17 face damage available.
And that's with 2 triggers of the Sendai, or of the Signal Regiment, sorry, that's 19. You can bring your
Well, you
opponent to
don't
2
even
health.
have to trigger both of them. You can do one trigger and hit with the arty.
Yeah.
So Turbo Cat does draw 2 cards next turn.
But what are those 2 cards? Because Kyber Bombing kills you.
A24J and
Yeah,
a guard is what you need. But
It
then
has to be... It
not
has to
enough.
be Production Order and Kyber Bombing. He can suppress the entire board and then clear it with Kyber Bombing. It has to be those 2 exact cards. Anything else loses.
Well, Firebomb would...
Or Jasko Kyber Bombing would have been enough, but he doesn't
Oh.
find it. The Kyber Bombing in the bottom 8 cards of the deck.
Noan 5 wins a grueling and uphill 2-1. And advances to the finals. So we will have a Noan 5 versus Head finals. What an incredible series. I hope we see more of Turbo Cat in the future. But that was insane. That was incredible. Any
I'm
comments?
just... I have simultaneously, I'm floored, but I also have so many things that I want to say. Just Turbo Cat, at the end of the day, he should be proud of making it this far. I mean, bringing Noan to the ropes, 2 very close games in a semifinals, 1 win away from making it to the finals. And I mean, he's still going to get some payout for getting in the tied for 3rd place range. But at the end of the day, it's maybe just these 1 or 2 decisions at the key points in the game that might just be the difference between these 2 players, Noan 5 and Turbo Cat. Turbo Cat played incredibly well, but there's a reason we see Noan qualifying to these tournaments in the top 2 positions, getting deep in these tournaments. It might just be that slight difference. But now Turbo Cat has some tapes. He can go home, he can watch them back, he can learn from his mistakes, and he can come back stronger in the next tournament.
No, yeah, I was very impressed. It was a great series, but we are going to take a look at the brackets, and then I believe me and Jking are going to be gotten rid of. Now, Head versus Noan in the finals. We saw Berto, Head, Dian, 66 better, Noan 5, Nerf, Time Traveler, and Turbo Cat all come today, bringing their absolute A game, but only 2 remain. Would it be Head or would it be Noan 5? Find out with Spooz and Starry.
Oh, you're muted. The classic.
A lot of things can be said about that or about both players, but you cannot say that Head and Noan didn't earn it. They,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
the
that
fact
Noan
that
match there was so insane. I mean, that was almost finals worthy match there. It was such a nice back and forth and really well played. So Noan definitely deserved to be here, and Head as well. So we're definitely looking forward to a really cool finals today.
yeah, Head coming back, reverse sweeping after losing to a disconnect, and then Noan fighting an absolutely, I think one of them said it was grueling, and I can't think of a better word to describe it. That was a really, really tough match for every single turn for what, like 25 turns?
Yeah.
Every single turn was like critical. So that is brutal.
That was amazing.
But anyways, no rest for the weary. No rest for the weary. Noan immediately has to get into it with Head in today's grand finals. So let's take a look at what Head is going to bring today. So Head has a Britain-US air list, a US-Britain ramp list, and a Germany-US mid-range list, and we've gotten to see the latter 2 of those lists a lot today, but we haven't seen the first one yet. It's gotten banned in both rounds, so maybe we will get a chance to see it, given that there are no bans in the final match. But Spooz, let's take a look at what Noan is bringing.
Yeah, so Noan's with one of the archetypes that was very, very dominant back in the days, bringing Legions today. First in Japan, Poland Legions, a deck that we just see recently in match number 3 here. A really, really cool deck, has some very interesting synergies, and yeah, made him win the semifinals and brought him to this finals here against Head. Second deck is US Poland Legion. Similar game plan, but I think it's a little bit more aggressive. You definitely have more early game than, I mean, not really more, but slightly different. You have access to Unity as strength, for example. It can just pop out a lot of damage in mid game, and then we have Brit Air, but with Soviet ally.
Yeah, an absolutely fascinating set of 3 decks there. What do you think about Unity of Strength? We haven't really gotten to see it do anything super crazy yet.
Yeah, I mean, so usually or originally was just played in tokens a lot, and
Mhm.
I think Noan just found a really cool spot there in Legion stack where it absolutely makes sense. Like you usually you have a lot of Legions on board which are infantry units, so it's kind of, even if you have a 2/2 Legion on board or on the front line, your opponent kind of forced to deal with this because you can easily flood your support line with more infantry units, and then you can just create a really, really big unit in the front line. So it kind of makes a lot of pressure on your opponent and kind of forces him to always deal with your infantry units on board, even if they are small at the moment, but they might just become really, really big soon.
Yeah, and Soviet ally Brit Air. I mean, what do Soviets have over? What's the differences between Soviet and US ally, and what would make somebody choose one versus the other?
I mean, yeah, we just saw that Rule Disguise is a really, really interesting card. I just found it really annoying when I played against it because it just offers you so much, yeah, instant answers. Even if you deploy the unit, it can instantly just operate. And also the periodic firestorm can burst out a lot of damage early on. So I think, yeah, no one just values this over Brit ally and even the Poland ally that is really, really dominant today, or not dominant, but very, very prominent. So it's played very often. But he's the only one that thinks Soviet air might be better, or Soviet ally for air.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are definitely players in the community that do prefer the Soviet variation. I think that it has a lot of strong anti-aggro options compared to the other ones. I think that US, just because of like Greyhound and 164th, you get to contest the front line early. It can help protect your air units. One of the cards that sometimes is played in Soviet secondary air is Catalina, but we don't see Catalina in this. Catalina is a 1/3 blitz bomber for 2. But it is kind of slow. It's only a 1/3. It's basically Swordfish with blitz for 1 extra credit. So, you know.
Yeah, also the sickle is really valuable
Mhm.
for the Soviet ally there. It helps you to deal with stuff like 15s carry. If you go second, for example, it can just help you to get rid of those and protect your smaller units. It's really a strong card and maybe stronger than some of the Polish alternatives. So
Yeah, I
we are going
mean,
to see how they play out, and if Soviet ally is maybe the better ally for Britain.
the fact that US Poland is in the finals, I don't know if I processed that yet. I don't know if I'm like emotionally prepared for that. US Legions just hasn't been around for so long. And I know that it was extremely dominant, like extremely dominant for a time a couple years ago. But since then, it's just completely fallen off. And when I looked at Noan's list, um, I saw like Iron Man and Unity of Strength and just a bunch of really bizarre cards that I just didn't think it would get here, but here we are. So what do we got going on here?
No one going in with the Japan version of the Legions archetype, and Head going in with Brit Air first. I think this is definitely a matchup for Head, especially with Swordfish and Gladiator in starting hand. Choosing not to keep Sea Embargo Probably looking for close air support here. 2 pounders also really nice with a 0 operation cost. But Noan with the 1/1 blitz unit on turn 1. So probably see the gladiator here, because this deals damage back to that unit. And it's not giving the free damage to a swordfish here for Noan. Nice top deck there for Noan in expansion. Getting in the draw as the first player here, so you're getting a little bit more back in the card, or back from the card disadvantage in your hand. Taking out the frontline unit there.
Honorable death, eh?
That's a good find.
I mean, it can be. It'd be really nice to see this expansion get off, but at the, on the other hand, anything that you do push to the front line is instantly going to die. It is definitely sort of tough here for Noan, especially given that Head has that close air support. And 2 pounder, what an interesting pick. What an interesting inclusion.
Yeah, I think 2 pounder is kind of underrated. I mean, if it can stay on board with 0 operation cost, it can do a lot in the early game. And I really like the synergy with the close air support. You can make it even bigger and even more valuable over time. So pretty good board here already for Head.
Yeah, and the 2 pounder, or is it 6 pounder? 6 pounder, 2 pounder? The
This
artillery
bonus
is
is
just
2
a
pounder,
one
yeah.
of. Yeah, this is just a one of. I mean, if you can buff it with close air support like Head has done, I think it's super, super good. But it is definitely a little bit weak if you can't. The 0 operation cost is great for tempo plays, but yeah, it's been a long time since I've included that one in my deck. I think the last time I played any reasonable amount with 2 pounder was like 2019, like 5 years ago. So it's been a while.
Yeah, I remember a meme that I played with it, and it was kind of okay. But yeah, overall 2 health is not too much, and if you are already behind in the early game, it's not doing too much and just easily to take, or it's just too easy to take it out, especially from stuff like 35T. But
And what do you think about Crusader? What a card. I mean, you usually see Crusader in combo decks where you're looking to just like draw through your entire deck. Do you think that there's like the critical mass of British orders in this deck that you need for Crusader to be good?
I mean, you have a lot of cheap ones, right? You have the For Freedom. Out for Freedom is not a Brit one, never mind. But you have the close air support. And also Brits, and especially Brit Air, with land lease, lost a really important card to just refill your hand. You only have the convoys and ATS maybe. We just saw players sneaking ATS into Brit decks today. So I think people are still trying to figure out what is the best additional way to give you card draw. And I think Head decided to go with the Crusader. We might see how it works out here. I think if you can find 1 or 2 more British orders, it helps you a lot to refill your hand, although spending credits on very cheap orders.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting game. On one hand, no one has this great frontline going on, but on the other hand, Head seems to have all of the actual oomph behind their cards, as well as a hand that is gonna continue to grow. I mean, 3 of the cards in Head's hand draw additional cards, so it really is a question of, can Head deal with this front line, and if so, I think that it's going to be very, very challenging for Noan to get back, to get back if their board is cleared.
Yeah, that Signal Regiment causes a lot of problems here for Head. There's not really a good answer with a smoke screen on it.
Mm-hmm.
But
And Head is saying, I'm going to go for tempo.
Yeah, absolutely. Why would you
you're at
not? I
8.
mean, down to 8 now. Both players don't have any healing in the deck, if I remember correctly. I think no one is not playing like something like long range recon.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 health, that is what they have remaining for the rest of the game. At maximum. Going for I mean, how do you deal with the swordfish? The gladiator is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a critical, like, you gotta spend the
Oh.
IHE smoke screen somewhere. Never mind. You know, why even say anything? Why even say anything? Just let Shinana do its work.
But still, 2 units survived it. Really interesting distribution of the damage there.
It's interesting because Shinana was just so it just fell out of favor for so long following its nerf. People experimented around with it a little bit and it didn't feel super good. But now I feel like it's in like every Jagro deck, every Japan Poland deck. It really has made the comeback. So
Yeah, and in this situation, we definitely saw why it did. It did a lot of damage there, enabling the takeout of the swordfish there, and had suddenly only left with a gladiator with 1 health, and not
mhm.
really good options to develop a board further here. If you play the albacore on the recants, you just give your opponent draw.
Interesting. Just going for as much draw as possible and setting up this, what is effectively a 3/4 that can trade really nicely into any units that are in the front line next turn. So
No one finding the draw from the expansion. Not the best draws in the world, but Type 93 is actually pretty powerful here.
yeah, Noan's gonna get to hit pretty hard this turn. Draw some
Not-
cards off of it, make a huge, huge swing. So
Can also take out the air landing brigade now with the Aishi. Decides not to do so.
yeah,
Because there
this is
still that
anybody's
5/4
game.
Legion. Yeah, I mean, at this point still, do you think so? Can Head come back from that?
Well, I think that if Head manages to find, I mean,
The
Head
Empire
doesn't need that
strikes?
much more damage. Oh yeah, oh my gosh, Empire Strikes would be great. Head doesn't need that much more damage. I don't think it's favorable for Head, but I think Head is still in it.
HMS double definitely helping here, and those are dealing 3
3
damage
damage
now,
apiece.
thanks to the air landing brigade. But Signal Regiment is slowly but surely shipping down. Even if Head takes out units, they're still dealing damage thanks to Signal Regiment.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that Head is out of this? Because I feel like after this Albacore comes down, Head is not that unfavored. Head doesn't really have, or sorry, no one doesn't really have any gas in their hand.
Yeah, sure.
So
I mean, it was a pretty good turn there from Head. I would have loved to see him taking out the air landing brigade earlier, to be honest, with the
air
IG.
landing, the fact that Head top decked HMS with air landing down, I mean,
Yeah, it
that's crazy.
pretty spicy. Yeah, not much to do here for Noan. If he plays the KARDS, only 1 Intel unit would be affected by it.
Yeah, I mean, it allows you to make a solid game plan because now you know every card in Head's hand. So it allows you to spend your last couple credits, you know, in the most effective way possible. But if you only have 20 seconds to think about it, then makes it a lot harder. And no one is
Face. I mean,
very much. I mean, ooh.
makes sense. There are 6 units on board. You would set your opponent to 6 health. I mean, it would make sense. Deciding to go for the traits instead. Protecting against the shark, maybe. Is there a shark in Heads? Because this would be a good answer to the Signal Regiment. So if
Yeah.
you
So the
go face here,
Spitfire,
yeah.
the Spitfire does a good job of protecting against these bombers, right? And if you can clear some of the stuff out of the front line, then I feel like you can be doing pretty decently.
Oh, so the Head is actually not playing the shark.
Oh, but you know, Head does have not a whole lot of HQ defense left, so this is a pretty critical turn here. Because you do kind of need to find a way to play the Spitfire and also find a way to clear the front line but that does seem pretty difficult.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff you need to do, right? You want to have the
You know what?
Spitfire down, you want to heal, you want to take out at least the Type
Yeah.
93, I guess?
One thing you can do.
Now is he going for the heal or is he taking out the Type 93?
If you air defense, or sorry, sea embargo. If you sea embargo your 1/4, you can actually value trade pretty nicely against the legions. Like, yes, you are actually nerfing your damage, but you can trade 1-for-1 with the legions. So yeah, this is a crazy tense game. The AA gun is sort of helpful in the long run, but I don't really know how long this game is going to go on. And so it looks like no one is just trading out with the 6/6 and maybe swinging for 4. It seems to be something that they're considering. Or they can trade out with the legions, swing in with those planes. Okay, so they're opting to put Noan down to 2. Sorry, down to 1. And saying, well, you gotta figure out a way to clear my board, suppress
Without-
the, suppress
Yeah.
the, yeah, man, if only had one more credit here. Wave after wave plus sincerely yours. Oh, never mind, that
Yeah,
would
even
clear
then
the
that would
legions, yeah.
not be enough, yeah, because the Legion would survive. I mean, the embargo is not good enough here.
You
Kitty
can kill the
Hawk.
legions though. You can kill the legions, and
Oh yeah,
in
because the
addition
Erlanging deals 3
play,
damage. Yeah, I see.
yeah, and you can play something else, so. Oh yeah, this is very nice. You can kitty hack the legions. You can take out the 15th cav. And I mean, yeah, no one definitely still has things to do, places to go, people to see, but it
This is a close one. What is this match number 1 here? Holy moly.
yeah, I mean, they've fought grueling matches to get here, and they're not willing to give it up without a fight. I don't know if I could do this. I would surely be making misplays if a game was this tight for this long.
Yeah, there's so many small nuances you could do wrong here in one turn, and then that loses you the game.
Oh, you can sea patrol into wave after wave. It puts you down to 1 health though, and then you die to the desperate.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, it's tough. It's tough.
I think Head needs to base race, I guess. So he needs to hit face. Yeah, you can't really take out these units any longer.
Yeah, no, you can. You can absolutely try and face. Oh no.
Ooh,
Well,
that's
that
losing him the game
does.
now, right?
Yep, that is gonna lose him. So I wonder if in retrospect, if it was doable. If you attack for 3, deal 2
Was there
damage
actually
with
was there
the Kitty
lethal?
Hawk. Yeah, and then oh wait, was that Miss Lethal? With the Sea Patrol.
Sea Patrol and Kitty Hawk?
Sea Patrol, Kitty Hawk, and oh man. I don't know, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that and make sure the lethal wasn't missed.
Yeah, 5 damage.
Oh
Kitty Hawk plus Sea
no!
Patrol, that's 5 damage.
Oh man,
It's
Head
the missed 5 damage that he spent into wave after wave.
unfortunate. Well, I mean,
that's probably because of the really, really long going first match here. I think it consumed a
yeah.
lot of brain power, a lot of thought process, and then you're just too fixed on several plays that you're just looking forward to do next turn, and you just miss the most important play to kill your opponent's HQ. Yikes, what a
Wow.
first match here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as I said, I think it was anybody's game. But yeah, so now no one only needs to win with the US Legion. Oh no, sorry, that's not true. There's no
No, 2
bans.
more. Yeah, no bans, so
Yep. So no one needs to win with both the Brit Soviet Air and the US Poland Legions. So out of those, which are there any that you think are a good idea to take next?
So I would love to see the Brit Air mirror, to be honest.
I
See
think Britter
which one is the
seems-
better one.
I think if you're looking to get a quick 2-0, I think that Brit Air makes more sense.
I think Head definitely stays with Brit Air. That's guaranteed, I guess. Okay, never mind. Switches to ramp. But Noan with a Brit Soviet Air now. Finds a Gladiator and a close air support in starting hand.
Head does, in fact, get turn 2 War Machine. The prophecy has foretold it. Oh my gosh, and the ultimate anti-Brit Air orders that are gonna be, you know, Head goes first, and Head has their ramp, so like, it's just gonna come down so early. It's gonna be such a problem for Noan. How are you gonna deal with the Stars and Stripes and the Strap Bombing one after another, coming down early,
Oh, and the Firebomb.
and the Firebomb?
And even more ramp now for Head.
Yeah, turn 4, Strap Bombing is an option, and it looks like Noan is buffing up those units and going face as fast as possible, which, yeah, I mean, that seems like the right play to me. Makes sense.
And Pathfinders now. Yikes.
And a turn 4 Strat Bombing comes down. I mean, that cuts Noan off of a huge amount of credits for the rest of the game. Is this credit denial? Are we watching credit denial all over again? Is it back?
It looks like it. I mean, look at what Head has here. It can still clear both of them next turn potentially, but no one having the buffs here with Sea Embargo. Deciding to give the Gladiator a little bit more juice.
I think you go Kitty Hawk here, right? Because you're face racing every single turn here.
Yeah, I think Thornfish is not it. Kitty Hawk with the 2 operation costs, and you're already down a few credits here. Can be a little bit too slow, but the 2 damage on deployment might just
crazy.
be what no one is looking for.
It's crazy that with these claimless guys, it doesn't even feel like no one's in that bad of a position. I mean, you can clear out a bunch of stuff in the same turn, attack face for quite a bit of damage. You can drop Spitfire potentially next turn, especially if your 3/3 gets cleared. Spending a credit on your 2/2 isn't necessarily as valuable. So yes, you can play Spitfire here. Next turn you can claim the skies into double attack face. Like this seems pretty decent.
Might see the Spitfire coming down here. With Fury on it. And how does Head respond to that? He only has 3 damage available in his hand. In Pathfinders and supply priorities. I think you don't want to play a Stars and Stripes on only 1 unit.
Alright, I think that you have to go for claim this guy's double attack. Seems so good. Attack for 10. It's so huge. And now Head is really sweating. I mean, so claim this guy is gonna give 2 defense. Then you know, Head's units in the front line are gonna deal 4 damage, regardless of the claim this guy targets. And then you can play Pathfinders. You actually are able to clear this Spitfire.
Wow, but now the Kitty Hawk is getting bounced infinitely, right? With Pathfinders on board. I mean, 122nd going to frontline, so probably this one is taking it out, but...
Yeah, you can play Kitty Hawk Ultra and try and race like that. You can convoy here first, see what you get. Or you
I would
can
love
Kitty
him to
Hawk
take out the
2/2.
121st, to be honest, and get a Kitty Hawk bounced. Is there a wait? Oh yeah, you could have played Sea Embargo, Rue the Skies on the 124th and get it bounced again?
You have to take Shark here, right? I mean, even if it only does 1 damage, that 1 damage might be the difference later in the game, unless you can somehow think that you can cheese your opponent with Wildebeest. Maybe you can
Just
cheese him with
imagine.
Wildebeest.
No, he's going for the safer
All
route
right.
here.
I think that this outrage, what Head finds off this outrage is critical for.
He could still clear the support line with Stars and Stripes supply priorities, but obviously
Yeah, and
you
then you
don't
have
want to do
nothing.
that. So I think there should be options, right? I think there should be almost guaranteed. Oh no.
Is that the develop 2 retributions?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my
You
gosh,
did
and then
not
Head
find
is
any
going.
damage distribution damage order. That's
And
really
then Head is just
unfortunate.
clearing it and saying, okay, I'm gonna develop some more retributions. I'm gonna use that to kind of find my way back into the game through value. Cause yeah, I
Oh, more
mean,
sickles. That's not what you want.
oh, Patriotic Firestorm.
That is
Hoo, hoo,
strong.
hoo, that is scary. That is very, very scary for Head
Yeah,
here.
I think you have to play 2 airplanes here, right?
Yep,
Gladiator,
I think
Shark
so.
deals face damage, and then you have lethal with
Yep.
periodic Firestorm next turn if your opponent is not able to clear both. Or
Okay,
one
so
of
the
them.
question is, does Head want cards in deck and you gamble with your America, or do you instantly go for the retributions? And I think that instantly going for the retributions is probably best.
And this should be something that deals at least one of them.
Yeah, it's probably deal 5 damage to a unit and then deal 2 damage to a unit, if I had to guess. Or potentially deal 2 damage, draw a card, and then just deal 2. Interesting. Okay, so
Noan 2 off.
yeah, if Noan
Oh, 3
drew
off actually.
Illustrious there, that was game.
Oh. Kitty Hawk? Shark?
Kitty Hawk Shark.
It's
That is
4.
very close. Very, very close. And I think we're gonna
holding
see a
it back
quick
as a
2-0 from
surprise?
Noan.
Yeah, go Shark.
Yeah, you put your opponent at 3, and then you have.
I think he's probably worried about there's only 1 Stars and Stripes, right?
Yes, 1 Stars and Stripes, 1 Strap Bombing, and both are gone.
What is he playing
So,
around then?
I think he just wants to keep Noan, or sorry, he wants to keep Head from having any way to get back into the game, but those Glamour Boys, the Glamour Boys and Blackwatch make this so much harder.
That's a juicy +4 health. They're almost doubling the health on Head's HQ.
Yeah, and suddenly the Patriotic Firestorm isn't looking nearly as good. How are you going to clear the Blackwatch so that you can even play the cards in your hand?
No
Yeah, and
draw.
this cast is pretty mediocre here. You gotta figure out a way to deal with this Blackwatch without using any orders. I don't know if I agree with that.
I would love to see that. You just do this, play the Shark, buff everything, and then over 2 turns you kill him with Shark. Like, what can he do? Just go to the front line next
Okay.
turn.
All right. Okay. Oh yeah, no. Okay, I see. Yeah, I did not calculate this, but yeah, no, that definitely
I think
works.
that is over. Oh, that's a little bit too late, but not. What is that 2 credit retribution there?
Yep, that is the
Would be
question.
interesting to know. Maybe to give something
Mitchell,
blitz.
that was an instant
Oh,
Mitchell pick.
if this hits one of the bombers, and then you can give it blitz with a 2 credit order. And
But
kill the other bomber? Oh, it hits the
you
fighter.
can't
Okay.
though, because
Oh, and it's 2 damage actually.
even if you did hit one of the bombers, you would have to attack into the fighter on the other.
Ah, yeah, you're right. You're correct.
Yep.
You're correct. And as you said, a quick 2-0 here for Noan.
Alright, so Head theoretically can still reverse sweep, but it is going to be an uphill battle. They did it in the last round. You know, we know that Head is capable of it, but no one has put up an absolutely dominant performance in both last round and this round. So this is it. This This is game. This is a match point.
3 match points now for Noan here. And it just turns out that Rule Disguise is really, really strong. That one turn 5, I think it was, with the Spitfire, taking out a unit and dealing 10 face damage. That was insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
really
it's
interesting
crazy
that it
that.
does not count as attack, right? It's just fighting, and then you can still operate a unit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that the strat bombing coming down so early, especially when Noan was on the draw. It's crazy that despite the huge credit lead, the fact that strat bombing like very, very specifically hurts Brit Air more than almost any other deck, Noan is still able to pull it out despite the turn 2 War Machine, the turn 3 Milk Truck, the turn 4 strat bombing. Like, I can't imagine for Head having that much better of a hand.
Ooh, Noan with a really strong opening here.
Yeah, although it looks like Head did get that turn 2 War Machine and is on the play. And again, looks like they're rushing towards some removal options, just like last game. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Head really needs to rely on a couple top decks in particular here.
Thinking about... Okay, not playing the production order yet. Finds another 164s. So I can't see that battle being the longest so far.
Yeah, and Noan
Although,
is just layering on the pressure.
we also need to update the score here. So Noan is actually leading 2-0 overhead. So this could be already the final match, depending on
But
how
this
this
could be
firebomb
it.
goes, maybe.
Oh my gosh! Oh my
Wow.
gosh!
Yeah. It got buffed from the dying 164s, and this is another 4-1 now that
Oh
Head
my
has
gosh,
to
this is
deal with.
crazy.
So
Alright, so
free
we're
Sherman here
probably...
for Noan next turn.
Yeah, we're guaranteed to see the Sherman come out.
And then that's already a lot of pressure here for Head. What can he do against this? Like, the MI5 is kind of useless when your opponent has an almost full hand.
Mm-hmm.
There comes the
Yeah,
Sherman.
the Shermans are a bit slow though, and Head is
Wow,
at
he found all of
16.
them.
So, especially if Head can figure out a way to get rid
Oh,
of... That's a great draw.
that's the nut draw. I mean, that's insane. No real
Yeah.
answer from Noan so far. Needs to top deck something that helps them get rid of this guard. 164s is not it.
You know, looks like no one is gonna slow roll here, recognizing that they have so much more value with the Karash, with the Shermans. You have a Sherman activator in your hand. You have that 164th in your hand, so those Shermans are pretty much live from here until the end of the game. So no one is confident that just through slow rolling that they can get there.
Kind of forced to strat bomb here maybe, although you're only killing the Karash, really. Can also use firebomb maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Firebomb on the Karash is an option,
Decides
but
to
Strat
go
Bombing
for...
does keep no one behind on credits, and
Yeah.
that is important as well, so...
Now it goes for the production order. With the option to suppress Noan's board whenever it's necessary. Yeah, 2 operation costs on the Sherman really hurt Noan here. Can't really push it up and play a Sherman. You can... They have a full hand. Almost full hand. Deciding to develop more legions. With section 2 in hand, doesn't really make sense. Oh, wow.
What
The
a draw! And on the
bomber motherfucker.
critical turn, Oh my gosh, literally the first turn that you can use it
Oh.
completely wipes your opponent's board, and suddenly Head is completely back in this game.
Also
Getting
finds
a
a B17.
B17 is able to push up this this Glamour Boys. Oh, finds Blackwatch so that even when the Glamour Boys dies, we can, you know, continue to push stuff up. And, you know, no one can trade out with this 142nd, but then these Shermans are just what do you do with these Shermans?
Yeah, I think he's going for the Legions here. Buff that one up. But then it's really vulnerable to B17. It's a really tough choice here. Maybe you just play a Sherman for tempo here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ooh.
It's a very tough decision. You have three options. You can trade, you can play Section, or you can play Sherman, and none of them seem that much better than the other options.
Yeah.
Head can drop a B17, which just eats 1 unit per turn from here until the end of the game. Wow, Head has, in one fell swoop, completely stabilized. If I was Noan and I saw my opponent draw the Bomber Mafia on turn 9, I would be so incredibly tilted. If I saw them top deck that Bomber Mafia, I would be tilted beyond belief.
Yeah, that was really insane and really painful here for Noan. Without that Bomber Mafia, it would have been way, way harder to deal with all this stuff, but all you need is one BM and you're back into the game. And this B17 is causing a lot of trouble here for Noan.
Yeah, Head can just eat the Sherman, play a guard unit, or even play the 121st if that's what you prefer. And this is very, very tough for Noan to get out of. Yeah, this cuts off the Sherman draws, so
Oh,
yeah, I mean, what do you even do
Unity
here?
feels, I think Unity feels a little bit awkward sometimes. You top deck it at the wrong moment and there's not really a good spot to ever play it out, feels like. That it's having such a strong impact as you're hoping for.
No one decides to save the 4 freedom. Maybe it might be the difference between getting to kill that B17 and not, so not overcommitting.
Oh, it's so annoying for Noan, right? With knowing that your opponent has the B24J in hand. Can simply just reset the health of all of your legions. That's really a really tough situation here. And we still haven't updated the score yet, so Noan already having 2 wins in his pockets.
This is so tough.
Oh, might see Unity Strengths just to get it out of range. Oh, okay. Really wants to force out the B24, I guess. But is Head ever playing it here? Since there are other good options, and Firebomb, for example.
Yeah, I mean, Head really should just try and finish this as quickly as possible, I think. Like, I think that you can probably play.
Yeah, I don't see no one coming back from that situation here, to be honest. You're facing 2 bombers, you don't have that many good answers to bombers. You're mostly relying on infantry units. This is
When
really
yeah,
tough, isn't it?
when both players are behind in hand, when nobody has a really particularly strong hand, and you have a super powerful board, the best thing you can do is just try to end the game as quickly as possible before any of you get chances to draw, right? Because the more opportunities your opponent has to draw, the more opportunities they have to draw the out, the classic out, the prophesized out. So,
Yeah, but what
yeah, I
would be
think that
no
if you're
one's
Head
out here?
here,
I don't see anything that brings him back into the game. I mean, sure, he has a good backline here.
yeah, I mean the Tarnov, if you can find some critical combination of cards with the Tarnov that just allows you to recoup a ton of value. It's not like you don't have the credits. You have credits for days for both players. So, and Head is just suffocating Noan here.
And Noan's stuck with 2 Shermans in hand here that are... Oh, wait, you can get draw out of them now.
Can you?
Pathfinder's really good draw here. Can
Oh, true,
finish
true.
off the Black Watch, push them to the front line, and get Sherman draw. That was probably the best card they could have drawn here.
Definitely among the better, for sure.
But still, there's still that B-24 circling around Noan's units here, taking out one by one, turn after turn. Holding back the B-17, I guess, although it's really strong on board
I think that
as
it would have
well.
been really nice to play B17, push up
Yeah.
Flamer Boys, and then what's your opponent
And
gonna
then
do?
go face with 6, right? I mean, what is he holding it back for? If your opponent goes white with legions, you get less way value out of it than you would do with just having it on board. I would have loved to see that. But yeah, we're obviously not in the OCC finals here, so I think there's definitely a thought process behind that one. Is he bouncing? Okay.
Well,
I mean, at some point you kind of need to get rid of it, but now your opponent can just suppress your units another time. So what could you do with your head? There's a lot of options, but none of them is really optimal. Just bring back that bomber. And then maybe play the Glamour Boys, or do you go for a yank here? Okay.
I don't know if
Everything.
there's a wrong option per se. It's kind of just a matter of time before Head gets the pressure to start dealing damage.
Boah, no, not with the best options in hand here. Oh wait, that was good, right? Finds another Sherman draw. Bounces B24J again. And that's the first HQ damage in a while. Finally fought himself back into the front line. But Head still with a lot of stuff left here. Double Glamour Boys will heal him for another 8. Yeah, now B17 is kind of awkward here. I would have loved to see him play this earlier.
Man, Head somehow has had all of that progress wiped away. And, you know,
Yeah.
suddenly no one is able to start getting those draws, start redeveloping a board.
But that was the final... That was the last Sherman there for Noan. No Sherman left. Skytrain can stop the B17, but...
You can play 99 on the Sherman, trade out with the 5th Ranger, or sorry, not the 5th Rangers. 5th Rangers isn't even here anymore. So sad. With the Glamour Boys, and then play your 2 airplanes. So yeah, if you're Head, I mean, what's the best way to close out the game?
At this point,
I don't know if
it's-
you have the time to go for Yank. Maybe you do. Maybe you do.
I mean, that's what he holding that contribution back for, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wants to play Yank at some point and then just get an additional retribution out of that one. Is it even contribution?
Retribution? Outrage?
Yeah, but the 1 credit order is called
Outrage.
outrage. See, how do
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I come up with contribution. So that's
That's a pretty
2
big.
bombers again.
That's a pretty big strat bombing. It's not gonna be quite enough to take care of these bombers immediately, but it does threaten them over the next 2 turns. So
Noan's setting up for strat bombing here next turn, killing at
yeah, and I
least
think he is
B24J.
telegraphing it a little bit. I think that it's pretty obvious that if you're setting them all to 3, it's pretty obvious what you're doing. And no one is deciding, is it better to clear a Jasko that is otherwise literally not clearable? Or is it better to
The
try
other question
and...
is Jasko your biggest problem? I think not really. And
And that should be it.
another bomber mafia.
And B24D, and that should be it. That's gonna be 6 plus 5 plus 6. That is exactly lethal. Head just missed the lethal there. Oh no, never mind.
No, it was a
Because of
fighter.
Skytrain. Yep,
Yeah.
because of Skytrain.
But no one
Um,
realizing this is no longer winnable, even
Yeah,
with the strat bombing.
so I wonder, so now that Head has sort of shaken Noan a little bit, you know, does Noan still feel confident about this pick, this US pick? I mean, it's definitely the least conventional of the decks that they brought. And, you know, if you're Noan, are you suddenly thinking, oh my gosh, what if this is gonna be the deck that causes me to lose OCCs?
I don't know. I think it performed quite well, and I think this was one of the harder matchups to face, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely. I think it definitely has the potential to take a win here against any of Head's deck that is left here. Maybe not against the Brit Air deck, but maybe against the German deck, because this deck is not running Leopold, for example, which would be really good. So if no one just goes wide with the legions here, I think this deck might struggle to clear all these small infantry units. Like the other deck had Bomber Mafia, which just basically one had the game. And yeah, with this German deck, Head is not having access to it. Not even Maelstrom in it. So this should be a way better matchup for Noan. And Head with a turn 2 War Machine again.
He always has it. It's just a skill difference, to be honest. If
At
you
least
don't
he has
have
it
War
in
Machine,
99% of the times, yeah. Because I can
yeah,
remember a game where he did not have it, but it's very high chance that he always have it. And just deciding what to do here. Is he going for the BF? Is he just going for more ramp? Although he's not having good options to ramp into. So I think we might just see the BF. The Zerstörer. Bubbles' favorite card to pronounce.
yeah.
Oh, and PIR buffing itself again.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's a little unfortunate, but on the other hand, the Zerstörer was just gonna trade into the 2/2/1 anyways. Like, it's not like
Sure.
it makes a huge difference.
I think in this situation it was a really good hit. Because it's just
Yeah.
hidden behind these guards, and this goes to the front line. It could be a lot of potential damage
Oh,
there.
true. Yeah, no, if you can just hide it, guard on either side, then yeah, you could push quite a lot of damage through. And it looks like Head is not contesting the front line. So it looks like stretch the line, double push up, or potentially stretch the line, stretch the line.
That's a lot of stretching here.
That's... I'm sure that Noan's line is very flexible after that.
Look at this. That is a huge support line.
Yeah, and Head, you know, last time Head had the Stars and Stripes, has the strap bombing, but Head is not gonna have those sort of cards this time, so...
This is really problematic, and no one has 2 Karash in hand, so they can grow even further, and then he suddenly has a guarded bomber as well. That's bad news for Head, but he's not out of the game yet. Still anything can happen, but no one in a pretty good spot here. And we might see Unity Strength being the MVP in this match, maybe. Head with the 22nd. Give him additional draw. I mean, Head has the M10 as well to suppress one unit that maybe grew out of control.
Yeah, I mean, these Karashas are nice in that they will, over time, make these legions bigger, but they are pretty slow. They are, in fact, pretty slow, and
Sure.
the big problem that I see over the next couple turns is once the autocannon comes down, it could start just eating away at legions, and I don't know if Noan has anything that super counters it, especially if the Devil's Brigade is being used on the 22nd, which I don't think is a bad play. I want to be clear. I do think that that's a good play, but it means that the autocannon is more threatening if Head is able to clear the front line.
So chooses to push the Red Devils to the front line there. Keeps his legions alive to let them grow bigger before he pushes them up.
Yeah, the 101st is such a nice top deck. I mean, it allows you to trade out so nicely with the Devil's Brigade. As long as you're the one attacking, you're pretty guaranteed to be able to kill one of those two legions. It's unlikely that no one is going to double buff those legions next turn.
I think he wants to play the 101st on the autocannon, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's super valid.
And no one is not having an immediate answer to that autocannon. He's the 101st and knows they might be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, you can push up to very large infantry units, but we know, well, actually no one does too, because it's intel. We know that next turn one of them is going to die to the 101st plus autocannon.
So what do we push up here? I think the 2 guards. And attack with the PIR?
Well, that allows the PIR to be killed very easily by
From the
Heinkel.
Heinkel, that makes sense.
So I would probably push up the 7-4 and the 6-3, make them have to answer those threats. The good news is that Karash next turn will deal with the autocannon. With either the 99th or the For Freedom
Ooh, but
buff,
the Devil's
depending on how
Brigade
you.
here.
Yeah, that allows you to trade off really nicely.
That lets you kill the PIR. Plus the Karash, maybe.
Yeah, and then you still have the credits left over to 101st the Heinkel and kill the Karash.
Ooh, goes for the frontline clear here. Afraid of the Unity of Strength, probably. There comes the 101st on the Heinkel. So really good turn here from Head. Good sequencing and good almost bulk clear here.
This match, I mean, I give so much credit to these players because every game is so difficult. It's a fight every single turn.
No
None
one
of
needs
these
to
games have
find
been
better
easy for
cards
any
here.
players.
Oh.
Devil's Brigade plus Pathfinders, that does get rid of, one of the two bomber/artillery units.
Well, just the Heinkel is the bigger threat than the autocannon.
Mm-hmm.
War production, not really what you want to top deck in this situation that late in the game.
It probably makes sense for your head to kill the 2/2, play the FW, maybe play a War Machine, and then I guess you can still Jaeger after that too if you want. In fact, you can play Jaeger and then autocannon. Oh, instead opting to kill the 10-3 and then trading out.
There goes the
Playing the Jaeger and
Pathfinders.
then trading out. Oh no, pushing up instead. Okay. Well, Head has a pretty commanding position here. It looks like it's going to go to a game 3.
Yeah, I mean, Head's hand is not looking that great, but with the Spoils of War, he can definitely look for the stuff that he needs.
Mm-hmm.
There's the punish. And the Panthers VH as well, for even more search options here.
Yeah, right off the bat, you can FW the Sherman, you can autocanona the 5-3, and then you can trade with the Jaeger. But I'm sure that there's an even better play than that, but that's the one that immediately is visible.
Insta snap on the hipper here.
Ah, yeah, I mean, Hipper's crazy. Hipper's nutty.
Targets the
And
Sherman
it
to get a
looks like Head is
draw.
gonna go for some sort of variant on what I suggested.
There we go. Another good board clear here for Head. And Noan. And another tough spot here.
This is so tough. I mean, it'd be nice if no one had something like Uprising, but when you're the frontline deck and you want to be presenting threats and having a big board and such, you don't really want Uprising. But man, it would really be handy right about now. Panzergren, it's just more and more value.
And Head switching into face only mode with the Schützen.
Oh yeah.
Bringing him down to
And
2.
that should be game. Oh no, that should not gonna be quite game. I was thinking that the Panzergren already gave the 35T, but yeah, no one doesn't have any heal in this deck, at least not a whole
Probably
lot.
plan west, so he could guard up here, but the autocannon is the big problem here. And
No
there's
one
not really an answer.
has the ski boys for heal, but as we just saw, one of them just got taken out, so I don't know how many options no one has left, and if no one can't get rid of this autocanone right now, literally right now, the game is over.
So there was a chance bouncing them back and kill autocannon with the Sherman, but I
And
think there was
that,
no way to kill the FW, right?
yeah, missing one credit. Well,
And that's
yeah,
it.
so we're gonna go to a game 3.
Game 5.
Or sorry, game 5, I mean.
Game
Oh my
5.
gosh!
Head
Head
has the chance to reverse
threatening
sweep
the reverse sweep.
no one here. So this will be the deciding match,
This
and it
is,
will be Brit Air versus US Poland Legions.
if you're Noan, you have to be shaken. Like the first one, okay, maybe it's a fluke. Second one, you start have to asking yourself, did I bring the right deck? This this US Poland list, you know, it's not 2021 anymore.
Yeah, and
So
we saw this deck struggle against bombers and artillery. And guess what Head's deck is having? 2
mhm,
pounders and bombers. So
yeah.
I would be really shaking if I would be no one here.
Yeah, and if you're ahead and you go first and you get like turn one, let's say swordfish, turn two, 2-pounder, turn three, anything and cast. Oh my gosh. Like that's just crippling for no one.
I think it's really important for Noan to go first here in this scenario and hope to find a 164s to go to the front line, because that's what he really needs to deal with those potential early airplanes there from Head.
Yeah, and um
Oh, okay, a half track is a good start here to have in hand to bounce any of these airplanes. Head also not with the greatest starting hand here. Found a Greyhound and the air landing brigade. But that's not what you're usually looking for.
so here's the thing with Noan's deck is that no one has almost no removal, right? I mean, there's the Pathfinders, the Stars and Stripes, the M10, and the strap bombing, and other than that, like, what do you
Head found the
have?
swordfish. There is the swordfish and sea
The Pioneer
embargo.
too is really nice. Like, oh, this looks like a great start for Head. Aside from the fact that Head is not playing first, but other than that, it looks really nice.
On the other
You
hand,
can
no one has the
play-
half track, right? So we really have to keep that in mind. But with two
Head
swordfish,
is-
it's kind of hard to deal with both.
Head is really making it seem like they have a closer support in hand. And I don't know if that's on purpose. I don't know if it's mind games here or if it's just best to get these units down as quickly as possible for this air landing brigade.
Oh, that
But-
is so much value. And there comes the suppress on the air landing brigade.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means that head has a good way to take out. Yeah, whether the guard unit or the M10. I mean, I think you can't can't really get rid of both. No, he's
Interesting
one credit
play.
short, or 2 credits short actually.
No
Blocking
one
the
is
front
keeping
lane
up the
here.
pressure fairly decently, and as long as they can draw like either a stars and stripes or a strap bombing on a critical turn, I do think that Noan definitely has very strong chances here. But without a stars and stripes or a strap bombing, head support line is just too commanding.
Let's see how many copies does no one have. 1 stars and stripes and 1 strap bombing, yeah. That's not too many outs, but so far found a good way to deal with the early units here from head.
Yeah, I think no matter what, you're playing Pioneer and 1 C embargo here.
Yeah. I
Or
guess
even Pioneer into production order. But I think C embargo is probably a bit more consistent.
can you find out of that?
Kitty Hawk, that's pretty
Ooh.
decent.
Kitty Hawk is good. Deciding to take out the M10. Play another C embargo, brings this out of range of the Red Devils now. But now no one has the chance to get Sherman draw.
Yep. Yeah, there wasn't any way for head to clear everything, so I think it makes sense to just make your units big and unkillable.
Find another Sherman. I mean, do you Sherman here, or do you utilize a half track maybe? Bounce one of the swordfish? It's really tough. I think you want to have your Sherman draw as long as you're able to, right? Also a 4-4 is really helpful. But it lets the opponent 2 swordfish on board. So no one definitely thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not that easy of a choice. Decides to go for the Sherman, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I guess the 164th is decent here, but head definitely still commands the tempo. And that's a great cast.
Ooh.
That is a huge cast. It allows you to play like Kitty Hawk. The thing with Kitty Hawk is if you do play it, you probably want to play it on the Sherman and then bomb both of the bigger units on Noan's side.
Yeah, you could go Glorious Air Support and take out Sherman and Devil's Brigade.
Yeah, because you can't risk that 164th giving the buff to Devil's Brigade or suddenly it becomes unkillable.
And he goes for the B-24D.
Yeah, which synergizes really nicely with Wellington, actually. It's interesting to see a Brit air list with production order, because that's not something that we see very often. We've seen Bomber Mafia, but production order is an interesting one.
It could be the deciding factor here. A 6.5 Blitz Bomber. It's definitely really strong. Now there comes the half track. The biggest of the swordfish. But still, No one is not having good answers against airplanes in general. I mean, against fighter, he has a wall of guards, but those bombers are really causing some issues. And Head has 2 more of them in hand. Now 3. And what did he top deck? A Gladiator. That is not really good. But still a lot of value left there in hand.
Yeah, I think if you can manage to clear enough of the other stuff, then maybe it's a good time for Wellington.
Yeah, Wellington goes for the Sherman. Yeah, perfect. Perfect turn here.
And Noan just can't find the Stars and Stripes or the Strap Bombing. Both would be fantastic here.
That would be absolutely amazing. Stars and Stripes will clear the whole support line. Not even a Tama regiment to enable some draw.
Yeah, the best you're getting is Karash. So 164th. Oh man, like I'm trying to figure out any combination of cards in Noan's hand that at least does something, like literally anything. And it's not super clear.
Just try to go as wide as possible to have a chance that at least something stays on board.
Yeah, and just dig for your outs, dig for the Strap Bombing, dig for the Stars and Stripes. Now at this point it has to be Stars and Stripes.
Ignoring the 164s in the front line. Punish?
Punish is pretty good.
There are some good targets, there are some bad targets.
That's huge. That's absolutely massive.
Wow. That was the
Oh
best
my
hit possible.
gosh. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And suddenly
you can use
hand
this.
became way, way worse.
Yeah. I mean, no one still has to figure out a way to deal with the board, but at least hand is looking significantly less threatening. The deuce.
Oh, so Iron Man only costs 2 now.
Yeah, an unintentional synergy. Sorry, what did I say? Unintentional is what I meant
Yeah,
to
I think it was correct. At least for
Unintentional
me, it
synergy.
sounds correct as a non-native speaker. Takes out the Skytrain. Yeah, I think at this point it's only just killing everything that Noan just brings there and wait
Yeah,
until
if you
your airplanes are
go.
big enough to... I mean, you're still really vulnerable to Stars and Stripes, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like at some point you start going for tempo, and there it is.
There it is, the switch. Because this is the setup
You
for
don't want to
lethal
let
next turn.
you don't want to let your opponent draw the out.
There it is!
Oh my gosh, huge! Huge!
Wow, we found it. Right when Head had lethal on board, he
And
found the
suddenly this
Stars and
game
Stripes.
looks completely different. Completely different. I think you play Iron Man here. Start getting into the front line, use it to inflict some damage.
Probably thinking to push up the deuce.
Yeah, it's a debate between Iron Man and pushing up deuce, I'm sure. And maybe Plan West. I feel like Plan West is better saved for a turn where you're also playing Section 2 in the same turn. Oh my gosh, what a game-changing play. What a game-changing top deck.
Also, this was his only out, right? The
Yeah.
Strap bombing would have not
Yeah,
been good
literally
enough.
only out.
It was a 1 out of 20. Not too shabby, I would say. So Head
Certainly not too shabby.
suddenly no longer in that much of a dominant position here. There's still ways to win, but it's quite harder now.
Yeah, Albacore going for the 10. Kitty Hawk. Is it killing it? Yeah, okay, killing it. And then I guess we just play Sea Embargo and, you know, hope for the best. Wow, that's not the target that I thought.
I mean, it makes sense, because usually opponent... I mean, if you play it on the Albacore, your opponent probably just bounces it. And
Yeah,
now they
that's
have to
true.
make a tougher decision whether to bounce the Kitty Hawk, which gives you 2 more deployment damage.
Every single turn, Noan is coming back more and more. This is crazy. How is Noan in this game? Oh my
I
gosh.
tell you, stars and
Well,
stripes.
No, I know Stars and Stripes, but here's the thing: is I really think that Head needed to start putting on the pressure earlier. I think that if Head had, instead of just board clear, board clear, board clear, board clear for like literally 3 or 4 or 5 turns in a row,
Yeah.
I think this situation would look so much different. But as it is,
Look at this 164s. Has been in the front line for at least 5 turns, but now suddenly it rises like the phoenix and is suddenly a 6-6. That is a threat. So Unity Strength really doing work here.
and Sea Embargo is a great hit.
And Head has
It
no
might even be the
answers.
best hit. I mean, it's between that and
I mean,
Spitfire
Barracuda
for
is
sure.
really nice here to pin the 6-6. But it's not helping you long term. I mean, we might just, I don't know, maybe Spitfire here plus Barracuda.
What a crazy turn of events.
And that half track sitting there in Noan's hand is really bad news for Head.
So
Like
what else does Head have? Like, if you spent your production order and you already lost your V24J, then yeah, Head is not playing Bomber Mafia, so there's no more opportunities for a mass suppress. So it looks like Head really just has wave after wave, right? Yeah, convoy into wave after wave is theoretically possible.
I mean, no one had his 5% out here already. Maybe Head can do a similar miracle here. Oh wait, what? No longer guarding the HQ? I mean, sure, there's only 2 airplanes left there on board, but no real good answer to that Spitfire.
Yeah, I mean, no one is leading in every meaningful way. No one has a card draw engine in hand, which if it goes unanswered, which how could it not go unanswered with the board that they've established? And Head is just sitting on 3 1-cost planes. I mean, what the heck are those gonna do? I will say that's probably one of the most frustrating parts about Brit Air is if you just get a couple of early game units in a row, you have to play a bunch of early game units because Brit Air really needs that early game tempo, but then if late game you draw those early game units,
Yeah.
it sucks. It feels terrible.
Yeah, all these 1-drops in hand are not doing anything right now. Other than being cannon fodder, maybe.
And it looks like Head
It
doesn't
is.
have a way to stop Noan from getting lethal. I
Yeah,
think this
since
is
this
it.
9-5 is guarded, there's 13 damage in the front line, plus the Shermans and the Hell. Hi. The half track getting killed. 13? 17?
That is going to be
How?
uh
I can only count 17, so.
yeah, I see 17. There's the strat bombing. And that allows
I mean, you definitely do it here, right? Take out 3 units.
how could yeah, I mean you
But the
have to, because
Spitfire
otherwise you're dead.
with Fury is also really scary here.
Yeah, and the Spitfire only needs only
Only.
needs +3/+3. Needs +3/+3 to get there. Oh gosh. I feel like no one moved up that Sherman prematurely, if I'm gonna be 100% honest. And I think at this point you sort of just need to trade the Sherman out. Kill something with the legions. Push PIR up.
So what can Head top deck here that brings him back into the game?
Convoy into
or
wave
wins in the
after
game.
wave.
Swordfish is not it. That's
Convoy
exactly
into
what
wave
you
after
mentioned
wave. That's
before.
literally it.
That's it. There's no way
And
that
that's
he
gonna
clears
be
with
it.
that board. And Noan, after already leading 2-0, and had almost with a reverse sweep here, but Noan is our July OCC winners after a really, really close 3-2 series with a really good find there for the Stars and Stripes. Exactly in the correct moment when Head had lethal next turn. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit of luck that you need it, but Noan definitely deserved the win here today. Really great performance, but also had finishing second. Really good, well played from both of the players. And it was a really, really cool event, some really cool decks, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I mean the US Legions deck did manage to get there in the end. I wasn't sure if it could do it. I genuinely wasn't. We talked about it. We said this could be a really bad matchup if Head goes first. Head gets those early Swordfish, early buffs like big Casses. Then I mean, Head could run over before no one even really gets a chance. But no one pivoted those games at critical moments. Wow, what a final match. So we are going to bring in Bubbles and Jking, and we're gonna discuss. So Noan is that OCC winner. What were
We're
you gonna
having a
say, Spooz?
discussion. Is he the back-to-back winner now? Did he win last season? Yeah,
I
last
believe
season?
so. I believe he's back winners. So, anyways, we're gonna go over to Jking and Bubble to get their thoughts on this absolute madness that ensued at the end. So close to reverse sweep. Crazy top decks. What a match.
Hello and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose, to me and Jking. We're going to be doing a bit of a post-game sort of thing. Take a look at what we've seen today, what decks did well, what decks didn't do well, what surprises there were, and just give a bit of an overall arc of the day. I do actually want to take one more quick look at the bracket before we do that, just so we can cover who did what, who was where, and how it went. So we saw Head versus Birdo Burrito. Head was able to take a 2-0 lead, and then we saw Dian versus 66 Better, where Dian was able to take the 2-1 lead. This led to Head versus Dian. Head was able to take a 2-1 lead and go to the finals. On the lower bracket, we had Noan 5 versus Nuff, which was a 2-0 lead to Noan. We then had Turbo Cat knocking out Time Traveler with also a 2-0 win. We then saw Noan 5 take Turbo Cat in a 2-1 game, and then Noan 5 almost getting reverse sweep by Head, able to take a 3-2 lead against Head. Jking, is there anything in this bracket which surprises you, or was this roughly how you predicted it to go?
Well, I did submit my official bracket prediction, and it did not really turn out how I predicted, particularly in the upper half of the bracket. But I do believe that I did have Noan 5 coming out on the lower half of the bracket against Nuff and Time Traveler, two newer players to the OCC, and Turbo Cat, a player who hasn't been there recently. But I did just reference the previous OCCs, and this is not Noan's back-to-back. Noan actually lost in Game 5 of the finals, not the last OCC, but the OCC before that, to Spoker. This is the first OCC Noan has won in quite some time. He's gotten very, very close a few times in recent memory, but this is actually Noan's first win in quite some time. And yeah, this was just really his tournament.
Has to be very happy about that. Now, bringing the discussion to the decks we saw today, there were a few new decks that we've not really seen before. There were some old classics, things we've seen quite a bit before. One of the decks which we've seen a lot and seemed to underperform today was Brit Exile. Do you think Brit Exile's performance today is down to something in the meta, down to a shift in the game and how it's meant to be played? Or do you think it's simply that Brit Exile is a very high variance deck, and when it shows up to tournaments again and again and again, it will sometimes perform badly just due to variance? So is it a shift within the meta, or is it just an unfortunate day for Exile and it's still got its same place in the meta?
I really think it just comes down to Exile as a deck. if we saw the list that Exile lost to, nobody really had any hard techs against Exile. There was no through the breaches for the PZLs. There was no triple Sky Barons in every German deck. It really just, and it was nothing to do with Exile having really bad starts or anything like that, just getting run over. It was just Exile had good starts in fine matchups and just wasn't able to close out the game against good players. And I honestly think that this might even, part of it is just sort of, we didn't really see any hammer homes. Nobody got the key draws where it would have counted, but I think also part of it is just maybe Exile isn't a top tournament level deck. Maybe against the best of the best, Exile just falls short compared to other lists. So I think people are going to rethink what they're bringing for that British slot, because we have been shown some very interesting alternatives by both Head and Noan in the finals.
Do you think the surprise factor on ladder, or if you see a British opponent and you don't know if it's ramp, you don't know if it's air, or you don't know if it's Exile, plays a part in Exile being more successful on ladder? Not just that in tournaments you're against consistently good players, but also the players know what deck you're on and they know how to mulligan. I've definitely had it times where I've seen Brits and I've been like, okay, I'm going to keep Brit ramp, especially before Brit air returned, or Brit control, like push OTK and this sort of thing. And then it turned out to be Exile, and I really regretted keeping these heavier cards. Do you think that's a factor on why Exile might not perform as well in tournaments, or do you think that's less of a concern for these players?
I think that's certainly part of it. Another part of it is you can get a lot of value on ladder out of these zero-cost countermeasures when people aren't expecting them, if they don't know your deck list, and especially at the beginning of the game, if they don't know your Exile, they might build their entire opening few turns around pushing up a blitz unit to the front line before they realize what deck you're playing. Whereas in a tournament, you're going to be aware that there's cards like Unexpected Resistance in your opponent's list, and you're going to play differently around that. But I also think part of it is, I think there was very few players who really laddered with Exile. I don't think Exile was sort of the number one ladder deck that people were using to qualify for this tournament. I think it was a lot of people's just solid third pick list, and they saw the nerfs to air that happened since the last tournament, and they were a little too skeptical to go with air again following the nerfs. They wanted to pick a deck that really didn't see any nerfs, which is why I think there was a lot of push towards Exile. But now that we've seen Head and Noan both showing that Brit air can do quite well, even post nerfs, I think we will see a lot more air of the traditional variety with close air supports in the future tournaments.
All the rage today seems to be Poland. We've not just seen a lot of Exile, but we've seen a lot of Legions. And Legions is something which we have had a lot in the past. It's been a very, very popular deck historically, but it has been pushed to the sidelines for quite a while. Do you think Legions is here to stay? And do you think this can elevate decks like US Frontline, which have struggled a little bit in this mid-range meta with things like Schutzen and the Winter Regiment going around, sort of pushed US Frontliner back a little bit? And it did also lose Fifth Rangers and the Red Devils. So is Legions here to stay, and will this bolster this US mid-range deck back into the meta?
Yeah, so I think Legions is absolutely here to stay. They've lost nothing significant from the rotation, and they have just gotten two massively powerful tools in Punish and Stretch the Line. And this allows just a more variety in how you build your Legions decks. We didn't really see any from Noan, but you still have cards like Underground State, and you have cards like Uprising, where you can sort of make a more of a control variety. So I think there's going to be people trying out Legions in more control-oriented decks moving forward, now that I think Noan really highlighted the power of the two new cards, Stretch the Line and Punish, in these decks. And I think Japan Poland is really good. US Poland is a very interesting question, in that from what we saw today, at least from my perspective, I think it was the deck that Noan maybe struggled on the most to get across the line. I think US Poland is very powerful, but I'm not necessarily sold that it's the best version of US midrange. But this list, there's certainly a lot of things you can do with this list to try out different cards, swap in cards, maybe try out War Machines. I'm sure Noan has put a lot of work into this list, and I'm sure he's going to continue to put a lot of work into this list, because Noan is the type of player who, once he locks into a list, he will try to keep bringing it and changing it. So I'm sure there's a lot more work that Noan is going to put into this list, and maybe he will prove me wrong. Maybe US Poland is the secret sleeper pick of the meta right now.
So if Legions is here to stay, what nations is it going to be, mostly taking? Because obviously in Britain, which was a Poland Legions deck we had in the past, you've got Brit Air and you also have Brit Ramp, which are both fairly powerful decks. And then there is the potential for Push OTK, which is always lurking on the sidelines. For Japan, we've got Jagro with Germany Ally, which is historically been a very consistent deck, and we've seen a good amount of it today. And then obviously you just touched on US. So which main nation slot do you think is going to be worth it, where Poland is better than the other ally options?
Yeah. I starting with Britain. I think Britain Poland is a very, very powerful control deck, but it's a control deck and a type of deck that plays like nothing else in the meta for the last 2 years. So I don't think people are going to be very comfortable bringing Brit Poland control unless they have put a lot of hours into it. And there's not really a ton of opportunity to do that right now. So I think Brit Poland is going to exist on the fringes where you see it every once in a while. I think we saw one last tournament, and we've seen one this tournament brought by Turboat. Where I think it's powerful, but there's just so many powerful Brit options in the meta right now that you have a plethora to pick between. Japan is where it gets interesting. I think there's a lot of potential that Japan Poland is the best version of Japan right now. If you have to bring a Japan deck, and I think you should bring a Japan deck to a tournament, I think maybe Japan Poland is just the best thing we got because we saw 4 Jagro decks in this tournament. There was 0 Jagro decks in the finals. Jagro just did not perform today, and there was a lot of ramp, and the ramp wasn't necessarily hard teched against Jagro. There was a lot of air, there was a lot of exile, and these are matchups that Jagro can generally be favorable in. So it didn't really feel like Jagro was targeted in this tournament necessarily, and it just didn't perform. So maybe Japan German is just not it might be good on ladder. It's fast, it can get a lot of wins, but for a tournament, maybe Japan Poland where it's slower, you can control the gameplay a bit more. Maybe that is the direction Japan will be headed in.
So the last nation I want to talk about is Germany. We did see a lot of Heinz and a lot of Germany mid-range when we had this Blitz Doctrine being all over the place, and it was using Bomber Mafia as well, pre-Bomber Mafia nerf. We've seen a little bit of Germany mid-range today. We did see Head manage to reach the finals with a Germany mid-range deck. Where do you feel like the future is for Germany in cards over the next few months? Is it going to be a mainly mid-range deck? Is it going to be seeing much play? Or is it mostly going to be sidelined in favor of things like Britain, USA, Japan, and maybe a little bit of Soviets with push?
So I think with Germany, it is right now. I think the best thing you can be doing with Germany is going back to the German US and German Japan mid range. This sort of the decks we were playing before the expansion came out. And I do think maybe Germany Japan has been just a little bit outclassed. Not even necessarily outclassed, but I think it might just not be as favorable in the meta anymore. You see less Jagro. And if we do start to see more and more Poland, I think Germany Japan is less well situated to do well into these Poland ally decks. It's harder to deal with these tons of legions and cards like Punish in a deck that runs very limited card draw can be very punishing, pun intended. So I think maybe the best way to go for Germany is just War Machine German US ramp, where you play the War Machines and then you just play out the good 4, 5, and 6 cost units. And that's basically what Head brought today and had made it to the finals. And, didn't have any struggle necessarily winning with that German deck. He did get his win on that deck. So maybe German US, I think, is probably better than represented here today. I think had the only German deck, I believe. And I think it's better than that. But it is honestly at this point a big question of what's your third deck after Britain and Japan, in my opinion, when you're building a tournament lineup.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the breakdown on some of these decks and clearing up my questions. I'm sure it will certainly bolster my ladder play, and hopefully it will bolster some of the ladder play of you people at home. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Bubbles. This is Jking. We've had Starry and Spooz on the other cast, and we've had Mark Fierce doing his best to keep everything from falling together. There was scotch tape, there was glue used, and we've managed to super glue the servers back together. So hopefully there should be no more problems in the future. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time.
3, 2, 1.